Pizza presents SCP. The Steve Dangle Podcast with your hosts, Steve Dangle and Adam.
Are we allowed to?
Not until Adam says we can.
I think that's a great intro, and we will. It is the Steve Dangle Podcast. Normally you can, Mr. Chris Johnston, by the way. Welcome to the studio. Reporter Chris on Twitter. Leafs reporter, NHL reporter extraordinaire. We can, but that'll be in the non-radio section of the show, if that's cool with you.
Occasionally I have a potty mouth, so I just want to make sure that...
Well, we don't, and we'll shame you, collectively. So
I've gotten this far in life. I'm gonna own it.
We're gonna have a slideshow about how shameful you are.
So welcome to the show. We're so excited to have you, and I'm glad that you've made time for this show and its potty mouth. So thank you for that, and obviously you're on YouTube as well. Chris, are you aware of the phenomenon that's taking over the internet that is clickbait?
I've come to know its kind.
Okay,
yes.
okay. So I know that you're here, and I know we should be asking you questions, but I had to start the show with the worst headline I have ever read in my entire life about anything. And
was it Matthews to Arizona?
No, it was not Matthews to Arizona, because even the Arizona GM came in and said we're not that stupid.
Oh,
okay, but it's a headline that is from a mommy blog. Okay, we talk about this all the time. There's a formula. It's event happens, shocking event happens, and you won't believe
number 7.
Or when I found out my jaw dropped, or that sort of thing. So this one is from mommybuzz.com, and it was sent to us by a listener, and she says,
of course it was.
Yeah, because our listeners love us. She said, alligator drags toddler into lagoon at Disney World, and what he does is shocking.
Oh my God.
So the alligator story.
Wait, the alligator
You don't remember the alligator in the top?
No, in the headline. What the alligator does or what the kid
alligator
does
is shocking.
Oh what would have been shocking is if it baked the kid a cake.
Yes.
Right.
The alligatored, right?
It alligatored a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
The reason I bring this up is, Chris, when you see things like this, as someone who has actual journalistic integrity, who is genuinely interested in facts, does it drive you crazy, or do you just kind of let it go?
I let it go, but it does occasionally enter my thought process. Because look, things change and evolve over time, and I wonder where we are going with it, because there is certainly a lot of it in the hockey world, and I came up at a different time. Even I'm not that old, but I've been at it long enough that didn't fly back at certain points, and now it gets attention, it gets clicks, and and presumably gets monetized in some way. So I don't know what's going to go of it, but I don't put a lot of my mind into it, because you only have so much energy and so much time.
I think the title of this episode should be Chris Johnston joins us and what he said was shocking, or something like that. Don't you think?
Yes, let's do it. Because when he phoned in, I already called that episode Reporter Chris, so this is perfect.
Yeah, we can't call it Reporter Chris now.
No.
When I dragged the alligator into the water, what happened next was shocking.
That would be shocking. So there we go. We got a real story there.
Those are those Coburg country skills coming in handy.
I'm holding on to those as long as I can.
Yeah.
So let's start with the news from yesterday about the Leafs. If we're going to stay as close to home as possible, we had Jared Cowan officially being put on waivers. Buyout scenario. I don't know if that buyout has actually gone through yet. Because
what's awesome? It's literally 12 o'clock and 15 seconds. So the waiver period just closed, so let's see if we can find out.
Okay.
Chris is probably going to break stuff on the show again.
So while Chris checks that out, I'm just going to give you just what happens when he is bought out. So we get a $650,000 cap credit because the CBA is weird this year, and then next year it'll be a $750,000 cap charge. And what's interesting too is that it's not... Because he's under a certain age, I believe there is some sort of, that's the reason for this non-cap penalty this year. And it's a very funny rule, but you never see a guy this young getting bought out.
I think it's a little more rare. You would expect to see a vet in this sort of scenario, but that's a bad contract. There's a reason he's getting bought out. The cap credit scenario, though, I don't think I've ever seen before. Have you?
No, and the agent, Rick Vallette, didn't know about it. Didn't consider it, I guess. For one, when you're signing what would he have been, 22 when he signs that deal? And you're signing him to a pretty good contract, you're not even contemplating a buyout.
No.
At that point. And I think that was a fair way to think, when he was getting the deal. But because of the way it's structured where the money goes up, that's why the credit comes into play in very simple terms without getting into all the cap minutia on it. But, I actually think it's played a part in how bad this year turned out for Jared, because without that credit, maybe he still would have been played at least. But it got to a point where the Senators didn't want to play him. They traded him to the Leafs. The Leafs let him skate around for a few weeks and get rehabbed, and then they tell him to go home. And so he hasn't played a game, I don't think, since January. And part of that was that they couldn't risk him being injured, because then you couldn't buy him out if he was injured and you wouldn't get that credit. So, he got lots of money out of this, but, to lose half a year of his career at this point and now to be in danger of where his future is, that's a pretty big penalty to pay for him.
And what the salary cap has done to certain players' career, like, the Brian Bickle deal yesterday, for example. Oh, Brian Bickle. What? Brian Bickle can play, I think.
I think Brian Bickle can play bottom six, for sure. I think
Brian Bickle's a player, but he's making $4 million. Remember when we all thought, oh, Vincent LeCavalier, he's done, he's gone forever. And, well, it looks like he might be now. But it was just the contract.
Or Wade Redden, which created basically the Wade Redden rule. They demoted him just because he was making $6 million a year, not because he couldn't necessarily play.
Andrew McDonald. There's quite a few guys on this list, and it's only going to get bigger and bigger every year, unless Vegas takes them all.
Well, and then
that'd be cool.
But that would only alleviate the problem for a year, because NHL GMs get crazy at certain points of the year.
It's good enough for them.
So Jared has cleared.
He is cleared.
Yep. So he will be bought out by the Leafs.
So what's the process behind the scenes of something like this? Do they formally have to submit with the agent on the phone with the NHL, or is it a fax? Do they make a phone call? How do they do that normally? With
the player and the agent, you mean?
with the buyout. Obviously they've probably told the player and the agent. I know Lou admitted it publicly, but they would talk to you about that, and then what? They go to the NHL and say, this is what we want to do?
Exactly. So he has to be put on what's called unconditional waivers, which is a specific kind of waiver. And so obviously for 24 hours, there was a chance then for someone to claim him. Someone could have claimed him today, and he would just be property of that team. And once he does clear, then it's a formality, and they go through the paperwork, and he still gets paid a portion of his salary for the remaining 2 years now in his case, and he's a free agent as of this day, basically. So he doesn't have to wait till July 1st or June 25th to talk to other teams. His agent can be fielding calls this afternoon and could theoretically get him a new deal by tonight. You never know. That's the benefit for a younger guy, I think, especially, is this isn't all bad. Even Vinny LeCavalier, as you mentioned, he's getting paid to infinity by Tampa. He's still got, another 5-year deal out of Philadelphia and played 3 years of it, and now he's retiring. But some guys actually make out okay in a buyout. It's just not it can't be a good feeling to be basically told to go away.
No.
Miguel Grabowski did all right.
Yeah. Signed essentially almost the same contract when in New York after being bought out.
He had a 1-year blip in Washington where he still made $3 million.
Yeah,
and then he went to New York.
And Vinny's got it made because he's got 2 contracts like that.
I think he's one of the richest players in NHL history. I have to look that up. I guess we could ask Mr. Tom from General Fanager when he comes on next show.
On Tuesday.
By the way, we're going to have Tom from General Fanager come on next show.
So what is the future then for Jared Cowan? Because he was 24 years old. I do find it a bit, I guess maybe he turned 25 this year. But, this is a guy that was a highly touted prospect, does have hip problems, but at least from what we understand. But this was a guy the Senators expected their future to be. He expected to be a part of their future, and I think vice versa. Correct?
He did, and he's trying to take the positive out of this, and that he had hip injuries and I think some sort of groin ailments, everything in that central zone that tends to kind of tie together. You see it more with goalies, of course, because of the movements they have. But by being sent home by the Leafs, he's had more time than ever to rehab his injury, to work out, and to get ready. And I think the one thing he might find, and we've seen this in a lot of cases, if he signs the next deal that's a lot more reasonable, there's different expectations on what he has to be, what he needs to be, what he can be. And if he does get a little healthier, I mean, there's still a chance he has a long, career, I would say, just because of his age. It didn't look good. Look, his numbers in Ottawa were not good. There was a reason why they were looking to shed his salary pretty aggressively, and why they did, and why the Leafs took it and didn't even let him play a single game. But I wouldn't rule him out just yet. I'll be curious to see what that next contract looks like. And some guys, John Michael Lyles was much older, got bought out by the Leafs, played a couple more years in Carolina. I mean, there's lots of scenarios where he'll find another home and be just fine with his career.
And scored against the Leafs, I believe, in his first
scored
meeting.
Against the Leafs, in I believe he got the 4-1 goal in a 6-1 loss in a game where Jake Gardiner was a healthy scratch. Not that it has left a scar on my side.
Oh, and we'll get to Randy. We're getting to Randy.
I don't know.
Don't worry.
Oh, was that the game in Carolina?
Oh, you bet.
I was there. I forgot that detail. Yeah.
We were recording this very show.
Well, I hope someone can look this up. I'm pretty sure it was a back-to-back game. I'm almost certain. So it would be the 13-14 season. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure they played back-to-back, meaning there was no availability that we would typically have before the game in Carolina. And then we see warm-ups and Gardner scratched, and you're just like, whoa.
Okay.
And they got pumped. Like, didn't they lose like 6-1?
It was 6-1.
It was one of the tersest Randy press conferences I was ever part of. And I must say, from the media side of things, Randy was great to deal with. And
we know.
I realize that doesn't necessarily mean a lot, but to see him get terse was notable. And the proverbial brown stuff was hitting the fan at that point. I just remember that game in particular everything was happening. They scratch Gardner, they get pumped. Randy's pissed, and we're all just holding microphones trying to make sense of it all.
That was a weird, funny time. It was a very, very weird
helped
time.
Launch this show.
Yes, it did. It really kind of propelled us. So, Chris,
one note: it was a back-to-back.
Nice memory.
But was it the next day we were going to Washington?
The next day you're going to Washington.
Yes, okay.
Where they also lost 3-2.
I remember the travel more than I remember the games. It's just sad. Very, very sad.
Wasn't much memorable going on with the Leafs those 2 years, I think.
Disagree.
Wow. Lots of memorable,
and that particular season is the only season I've actually traveled the entire season with the team. So I might have missed an odd home game, but I went to like 80 games. Wow. So it blends in, but then you do remember certain things, like if the coach, something out of character will stand out, like Detroit when Randy said that James Reimer is just okay, which I realized took on its own life. But that was that same season, and I can tell you that exact road trip. We were out west. Reimer won a game in LA where he came in relief. It was on his birthday because I remember after the game the players were saying, "Hey, let's go out for beers," and Reimer was even saying yes. They're like, "Whoa!" even James is coming for beers tonight. And then we flew to Washington, which is an unusual NHL road trip, and the Leafs lost there. They're down 3-0 in like 6 seconds. And then we went to Detroit next. There was a big snowstorm. The plane was delayed, and then we get there, and he throws Reimer under the bus. So, and then it was back-to-back home against Tampa. You can double check
this.
And
then it's back-to-back home against Tampa.
Jesse, man.
So, anyway.
I think there was a lot about that time that wasn't necessarily memorable. It was can't forgettable. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't remember it as much as I just can't forget it.
Well, and when they won the game in LA, it gave them, I think it put them to second in the division briefly, and it was like, all right, they can't even screw this up. Like, even if they're 500 down the stretch, they're going to make the playoffs.
I think they're like...
And then they went less than 500
against LA in the last 2 or 3 years or something. Like, they've beaten like LA for almost the entire time they've been strong.
Right.
And every time they do it, I'm like, here we go. And they always follow it up with being the Leaf.
But I remember that California road trip being like that was a big test, and they came out alive.
Because they won in Anaheim on that trip in Randy's return.
That's right, and San Jose did not.
And then they went 0-8 after the LA road trip or California road trip.
I'm glad you got the facts here.
Yeah.
The facts!
Get here for the facts.
Well, no, because it's helping me out, because I remember it in sort of granular form. It was a bit...
You haven't been wrong yet.
Chaotic. So. But it was a bit chaotic, that period.
By the way, that's rare for this show. I mean, we're like 10 minutes in and nobody's been inaccurate yet. This is amazing. I mean, mostly that's me. It's probably because I've shut up this time. But so I gotta, Chris, we gotta talk about the Leafs. First off, important question: are you going to be buying the Toronto Maple Leafs draft hat?
I haven't seen it yet.
which they are now selling. Yes. Oh, you got to.
Is it worthy of purchase?
Well,
or?
I mean, it's pretty nice. I can flash it around here, guys.
I mean, obviously, I wouldn't be wearing it myself, but my nephew could maybe use.
Well, I just thought.
Are all three of us Googling this thing?
No, I have it right here.
Here.
It's in our Facebook group.
Snazzy, right?
It says
like that
draft on it and has a Toronto Maple Leaf.
Wow.
So
no one actually buys these, right? This is just the stuff they give the guys who get drafted.
I think there might be two people in this room who actually do buy these things.
You know what? They have the first overall pick. It's in Buffalo. A ton of fans are going to go down. They're going to buy the crap out of these hats.
Right,
They're
but
gonna
the
sell
Carolina
thousands.
Hurricanes version of that, not going to sell well.
They,
No, I don't think so.
But they're going to give it to like the 7 guys they draft as a memento and all their family or whatever.
And that's it.
That's it. Yeah, that'll be it.
And I'm not trying to pick on Carolina. I mean, like literally everybody else.
Yeah, but Toronto fans, it's a different
Cam
breed.
Ward signing bonus.
Well,
Funny thing, I own a Raptors draft hat, so I might get a Leafs
Yeah.
one.
Who did they draft?
From the Andrea Bargnani
It
draft.
was when they changed the logo to the claw one with the basketball in the middle. I got that draft hat.
Oh,
So,
a Rougeau.
yeah.
Yeah.
Do you ever wear it as like a throwback or?
I do. I wear it all the time.
Okay. Does it say draft on it?
It does not
In
say
big
draft
letters?
on it.
Draft. Draft. I mean, I guess if you're going to sit through a losing season, you got to at least celebrate something.
Right.
The draft,
yeah.
the draft is clearly one of the rewards of last year for Leafs fans. so-
Absolutely.
And for the
Absolutely.
front office, frankly, too.
Steve, are you going down?
Just for night one, yes.
So are you going to be buying the hat? Because I figured you would be.
See, Adam, I don't really pay for things though. Like,
Right, unless you're getting it for free.
free.
Chris, what you might not know about Steve is that he pays for nothing in terms of
I actually didn't know that.
no nothing.
Get a lot of free things.
Well, and the thing is that
Like, how did you get that Tim Hortons you're drinking?
Well, what happened was I purchased it on my phone with money that I was given on cards for my birthday, and then I promptly did not get Adam his coffee.
well, even though he asked if I wanted one, and I replied
Anyone want
almost
coffee?
right afterwards.
Neat, I don't care.
And the thing is that it's not because he gets a lot of stuff for free. It's just because the stuff he does get for free, he wears for 6 years.
Right.
So like he'll walk in here with Vancouver 2010 Nike stuff.
And I got in late 2009
Yes.
in Regina, Saskatchewan.
Yes.
He's just showing off because it still fits.
Yeah. Right. True. I mean,
not for long. I'm getting pretty swole. But I mean, you never know. You never know.
But going into the draft, I mean, people are talking. There's rumors, there's whispers, there's obviously we had the trade with the Hawks and Canes yesterday. Are we seeing are we going to see the floodgates open at the draft? Are we going to see some sort of huge trade thing happen?
We better.
Yeah.
I mean, I think so. That's what everyone's expectation is. Like, part of it, though, is sometimes it doesn't materialize. I mean, I've been to drafts with some hype heading in, but I have to think this year with the expansion announcement coming, Wednesday before the Friday draft. So everything will be solidified. The teams already have their expansion, what the draft's going to look like a year from now. So they're already in modes of, how do we move the pieces around and make this work? And then you have on top of that, we're going to get the cap announcement next week, which could be down even potentially. I don't think that's likely, but it's not going to be what some teams wanted. So with all those factors, I just don't see any way it isn't going to be a bonanza.
Will that announcement be before the draft?
Yes.
The cap announcement? Okay.
I don't know the day, but it will be said at least unofficially before the draft.
So there's something a little different this year with free agency, right? Can free agents not talk to other teams in a certain window?
That starts on the Saturday of the draft. So, I mean, it's chaos.
Is that day 1 or 2?
Day 2.
That's insane. That's insane.
I mean, we're getting closer to what a few of us have been pushing for in the media industry, but we need like the equivalent of baseball's winter meetings in the summer, where I think we need like draft and the opening of free agency all in the same city, all at the same time. I mean, maybe a day or two after the first round of the draft to not overshadow it, but have basically everyone who cares about hockey, agents, players, GMs, obviously media people come in, even fans, and just have it all be there, like just pure chaos. And then we could also escape July 1st when us Canadians, I've been doing this job for 12, 13 years. I haven't had Canada Day since I was a little kid.
Yeah.
And that sucks. I mean, it's just a personal thing. I mean, I don't want to get into personal gripes, but I don't think we should do it that way. I mean, why not get it done at the end of June and everyone could take the holidays off, both in the US and in Canada?
And what's a week? What's 1 week, right? I mean, that's all you're saying, right? Bring it back 1 week to the third week in June. the second last weekend.
I don't know anyone who would complain about it.
Yeah, I don't think we would either. I mean,
There's like the top 1% of fans who are like, "What? No, it's fine." But everyone else is, I think, hockeyed out by July.
Yeah.
They want to see a Jays game with the dome open, get severely sunburned.
Plus, like a hockey WrestleMania like that sounds like an amazing time.
and-
It would just be bananas.
I just have visions of all of us like stalking around this hotel lobby, trying to grab any agent or GM, figure out what's going on. Like, it would be awesome. It would be really cool. But usually in this league, stuff that's really cool goes away. Because I used to have the GM's meeting just before the trade deadline.
Yeah.
And what they found is all that would get discussed there is trades, and including covered by media members. So they moved it to like 2 weeks after the trade deadline so that they can focus on the rule changes, which I get. It's the point of the meeting, but come on, we got to sell a little sizzle here. I mean, there's some entertainment in this. In addition to it,
we're the NHL though. We're fine.
Anything that's cool gets taken away. The NHL.
Yeah, truly. I mean, we couldn't agree more with that sort of
That's
sentiment.
a bit harsh, but you know what I mean. It's just like
I don't think it's a bit harsh.
and there's some arguments against it, I'm sure, but I just don't see them trumping the kind of coverage that would get and the focus it would get. And you don't think Sportsnet would be going like 24/7 with press conferences out of whatever city you want to have this in?
Oh, it's great for ratings.
It'd be great for the city. You can have it at big convention centers. It would be bananas. I mean, and baseball does it in their winter meetings. They have 6 days of the whole industry in one giant hotel compound in Nashville. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but I've heard about it. Like, people don't go outside for 6 days. Like, the whole industry is like drinking, eating, getting stressed together. It's chaos, and it's amazing because what do fans like? I mean, literally, there is entertainment to this. I know it's people's lives and where they live and all that stuff, but
they chose that. They chose to be a part of that.
Plus, I mean, look at if you're like Steven Stamkos, for example. I mean, he's doing it obviously to control his future because he has the ability to, the negotiated right to. But if he goes to July 1st, he knows. I'm sure he knew what he was getting into, including getting questions all season long, speculation even during the playoffs. Is this his last game with Tampa? I mean, he had to withstand that, but he knew that was part of it. And look at the benefit is choosing where you live and potentially making a lot more money.
So we will get to Steven Stamkos and what the Leafs draft plan and trade plan and what anything that you think they might do next on Sportsnet 590 The Fan. We'll be right back. So do we want to hit Steven Stamkos first and then I guess the rest of the Leafs summer plans? Or do we want to talk about the Stanley Cup final? I think, interest-wise, Leafs first, but I guess chronologically, Stanley Cup first, right?
Let's maybe do Stanley Cup.
Okay.
Let's
just
make
people wait. Okay, fine.
We were talking about it a little bit before. You definitely got a tease, which is exactly what Stamkos is going to do.
Yeah.
But I almost got into it right there.
So Phil Kessel bringing the Cup back to Toronto. We know that's going to happen.
Supposedly.
Wow.
That's what he said. I think he might have been kidding. What do you think?
I hope he's not. I think it's. I think it'd be awesome, but. The one thing I've learned actually is in general, these guys are under a lot of pressure with their Cup day because it literally is a day. And it's almost like your wedding or something. Like, I know that there's a lot that goes into it, and usually hometowns want to make sure you're there and have a party in the streets and whatever. And, Madison, Wisconsin has a few NHLers. Adam Burish won a cup from there, but there's not been a lot. So, I mean, Phil does march to his own tune. So maybe he literally would be the one guy who spurns his hometown. But I think when push comes to shove, I'd be surprised if he brought it to his adopted hometown.
But now he said it. So typical Phil, getting himself in trouble in Toronto again.
Although, some Cup days aren't open to the public, though. Like some guys like just do a private thing in their backyard or whatever. And to me, even if Phil brought it to Toronto, I'd be stunned if there was any way for the fans or media to be part of it.
It would be a circus, but it would be crazy, right? Because it's Phil. I mean, I remember going to a really small one a couple times when the Detroit Red Wings won twice at the end of the 90s.
Chris Draper.
Yeah. I lived on Tilly, and his parents lived on that street as well. I don't know if they still do or not. And he'd bring it over, and Sportsnet would show up, and TSN would show up, and the Score would show up, and they'd all kind of get together and Stanley Cup, and it was
bring it to the Black Dog.
But
there'd be a picture, put it on the wall.
But there'd be maybe 20, 30 people there,
right?
I think if Phil Kessel brings a cup back to Toronto, there's thousands of people showing up to that.
Oh, it's bananas.
I heard a friend of his had proposed that he gets a Bentley and drives down Yonge Street with it, but I'm sure.
Yes.
Now, I'm sure Phil would never go for that. I have to make it clear that was his friend's proposal to Phil. But, I mean, good on him. Through all of this, I still feel like the fans of Toronto, for the most part, had no issues with Phil. There was a few media members that kind of made a thing of it, and it took on a life of its own. He was kind of an easy guy to talk about on largely bad teams and whatever. But he went and won, and he was great for the Penguins in the playoffs. And you're allowed to have your party wherever you want. I think it'd be tremendous if he embraced kind of the heel role and brought it back here and was walking around the streets with the Stanley Cup.
Razor Ramon.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what do you make of that? I mean, you're a member of the media who covers sports regularly. Why was he so picked on here? Why was he such a target for people here?
I think some of it was like the people believed it. I don't think that the individuals in question that really went after him were doing it because, I don't think that they were adopting sort of this stance and just, trying to push an agenda. I think some people did believe it was a problem. He was potentially out of shape and that he kind of had a certain attitude that, isn't always upbeat and that he isn't willing to be a face of the franchise sort of in the public realm. And so I think that those people believed it. I just personally never saw that as an issue because to me, he was paid to score and all he did in Toronto was score and led the team in scoring and, made, what players that make $8 million score at about the rate Phil scores. Like he's not even... You can't make an argument at this point that he's overpaid. So personally, I never had an issue with it, and I don't think fans, for the most part, give a shit about
it's okay
about
4 minutes in the second time.
Our about their dealings with the media. So I try not to bring that into my own coverage or discussion points. But
right.
I really just think some people believe that was a problem, and those people were wrong. But I think, but again, I don't think it was any more sort of we got to get this guy. I really
it wasn't sinister,
right?
It was they actually believed it.
They believed it was an issue, and then it did take on a life of its own. I mean, when Phil, and again, I give him credit for this, but when Phil was going back at Dave Feschuk, obviously both sides there, people get stubborn and they were digging in and, that it became kind of a bigger thing. But there was an undercurrent even in the early years that, he didn't speak enough and that he was. The weird thing about Phil is it all changed for me. I covered the U.S. Olympic camp in Washington before the 2014 Olympics. So it would have been like summer 2013. And I talked to Phil for like 45 minutes there. And literally that was 42 minutes longer than I'd ever spoken with him, like in any sort of sustained run. Mm-hmm. And he was talking about where he golfs and, things he was doing that summer. He was telling me that was the first summer, I believe, that he spent basically year round in Toronto. He didn't go away. Like, tell me how much he loved the city. He's got so many friends here. And we just talked the way people talk and the way, frankly, when you get to know athletes, it was a normal way to talk. And I was like, wow, okay, so there is a lot more there. It was first evidence. I mean, I always kind of assumed it. I didn't think he's like this dunce who somehow just plays hockey and doesn't otherwise speak English. I never assumed that. But I'm just saying, when I saw it, I was giving him then oodles of the benefit of the doubt. And after that subsequent season was that season I mentioned where I traveled with the team, and he and I would talk a lot, and often on the way to the bus or something. Like he never was a fan of the big scrum, but I always gave him a lot of credit. I just had no issues with it. It's sort of an awkward one for me to discuss because he and I never had a thing. I never made an issue of his perceived issues, but obviously some of my colleagues did, and it was a major story still being talked about in the Penguins locker room this spring. Like Jeff Zatkoff, who's a beauty of a guy.
Yeah.
Third string goalie. He apparently when the Penguins played back in Toronto this year on their drive from the airport downtown, he'd prepared a video of all Phil's scrapes with the media in Toronto, and he played it on the bus on the way to the ACC, and just to get everyone laughing and all that. But even he was bringing up sort of apropos nothing, like I know how hard Toronto is. Like basically other players around the league are aware of what happened here with him. I mean, it was that big a deal. But it was the most overblown thing ever.
Do you think the Penguins really rallied around that and Phil? Because there's what Zatkoff said. There's Bonino and Hagelin at the parade yesterday.
And what did they say?
they're basically like, it's so good to be playing with the legend Phil Kessel. Phil Kessel's a Stanley Cup champion. And then there was Brian Rust dressing up like a hot dog at a Halloween party. Like,
even the Penguins Twitter account, they tweeted out it's June 15th and Phil Kessel is Stanley Cup champion. And then it's like, who's that directed at? You know?
Who do you think? You know?
They might as well have tagged Toronto Maple Leafs.
Exactly.
Oh, they definitely should. Exactly. Well, we have Kasperi Kapanen.
Yeah, and a first round pick that's going to be what, 30th?
Basically a second, yeah, it's 30th.
Right. Although if we're going to go at this from the Leafs perspective, they probably don't finish 30th with Phil Kessel. Therefore, they probably don't have Austin Matthews without that trade. And so I think any viewing of that trade has to keep that larger context in mind. That
up until JVR got hurt, they were like 5 points out of a playoff spot.
Well, yeah, and they seemed. I heard an interview with Peter Holland, and I believe it was on Hockey Central one of the days you were on, Chris.
I heard an interview with Peter Holland. You talked to him like 2 days ago.
I did talk to him, and I actually have a highlight from that I have to play for you guys.
Oh, okay.
But and it has nothing to do with anything that's going to help us, like in terms of trade rumors or whatever. It's completely just a hilarious moment.
So what Adam's saying is his boy Peter Holland gave him a little info here. So.
No, his boy PH.
Yeah, PH. We go way back. No, he didn't. We didn't talk any hockey actually, but. What I thought was interesting was the thought that they truly believed this year, this team that they had together with Babcock, they believed that they could have made the playoffs. And I guess mathematically they could have. And Peter Holland was like, yeah, we're 5 points out. We could have done it.
And there were times they made me believe. There were times.
Well, I mean, as an athlete, you have to believe that, right? I mean, no one wants to play for the expansion San Jose Sharks that won like 7 games or whatever. I mean, where literally you can't even lie to yourself as an athlete and say we're going to win tonight.
No.
I mean, I get that. They could have maybe. Could have, would have, should have. But if without injuries, with James Reimer being in net rather than Garrett Sparks, no offense to Garrett, but, James outperformed Garrett this year in the NHL. I mean, there's a scenario where at least they don't finish 30th. I don't think it's even hard to imagine. The one thing they couldn't do is score goals. So add 30 with Phil, and you're already starting to go, ooh, that could be a few more wins in the standings. Mm-hmm. And then it's a few less lottery balls, and it might be no Austin Matthews. So
right. And is that what they're going to do? For sure?
No doubt.
Okay.
I mean, even they can't screw it up.
Why would you tempt fate and say something like that?
That actually isn't a comment aimed at the current people that work for the team. It's more the sort of
it's the logo.
The 50 years of this franchise that they finally get gifted the kind of center that you win championships with long term. I don't mean next year, of course. And you don't go for the flashy winger, even though. Look at Patrick Laine is all kinds of fun. Great for a reporter's notebook. Great for fans. He's going to be a great Winnipeg Jet, but I just don't see any scenario the Leafs take him.
I mean, Victor Hedman's a great player. John Tavares went first.
Right.
We talk about it every show, basically. Every year this seems to happen, or every second year. There's a clear-cut number one guy, and then someone comes in right around February and they go, just 1 second. Right after the World Juniors or something. Just you wait.
Well, what's interesting with that 09 draft is there was a report in Newsday, I believe it was, which covers the Islanders on draft weekend saying they were going to draft Matt Duchene. And I don't make light of this. I don't remember the guy's name, but he lost his job over it. He lost the beat over it anyway. Ooh, and apparently what had happened was he saw some kind of stuff the Islanders had brought, and there was a Duchene jersey, but they apparently had made one up for the top 3. Hedman I guess Hedman was the year before with Stamkos, but he was 09. Never mind.
No, 09 was Tavares, Hedman, Duchene.
There you go.
I believe.
And so they had one for each of those 3 guys, and I guess he saw the Duchene one and maybe didn't do his due diligence or whatever. No. But I mean, you're right. It comes up every year it's a photo finish every year. It starts off as a guy with like a 12 length lead, everyone's secretariat at the beginning, and then and then at the end, there's always this debate. But I really don't believe internally with the Leafs there's any debate. Number 34 will be in your programs next year.
Mm-hmm. Now, when James ultimately re-signs with the Leafs, who's going to get 34?
I don't think James is resigning with the Leafs.
I know.
I was thinking about putting together a YouTube tutorial video on how to convert your James Reimer jersey to a Austin Matthews jersey, right? I mean, I think that's needed now.
That would have some utility.
Right? I mean, you got to be, sometimes as a Leaf fan, you got to choose where you're going to spend your money, your fan money, right?
It would also be a phony jersey, though, because they're not even going to use that logo next year.
You're a phony.
But not everybody likes to spend money, apparently, Steve.
yeah, wouldn't bug you.
What I'm looking forward to is how I get my New Jersey free. That's what I'm looking forward to. I want to know how it's going to happen.
I will say at the Stanley Cup final, there were some great retro jerseys in both cities. Like San Jose's jersey game is strong.
It is very
There was
strong.
like Jonathan Chichus. There was like a Nick Dimitrakos.
Yep.
If you remember him from way back. There was all kinds of Doug Murray.
Rafi Torres, I saw. Nabokov, I saw.
Oh, I bet.
I like it though. Everyone is wearing a jersey, but they're just from all different vintages. And I kind of like that. I saw Colby Armstrong in Pittsburgh too. I took a picture and showed Colby.
Wow. He must have loved that.
Oh man, I tweeted it and his wife retweeted it. So
That's awesome.
I assume at home that played well, you know?
I saw Barrasso Penguins jersey.
Did you see any Jeff Friesen? San Jose.
No Pat Falloon either.
No Owen Nolan? I didn't see a Nolan.
No.
There probably is though. I think Owen.
there has to be.
Owen owns a bar near the rink.
No way.
Yeah, I think he's still around in the neighborhood. So there must be somewhere. I saw Mike Ricci physically too. So I don't know. I, for some reason, I love geeking out to like the old players that used to play for a team.
Oh, totally. Well, I mean, like that's the reason you do what you do, and what we do what we do. We grew up watching those guys. So even if they weren't a star when we were a little younger, we're like, I remember Mike Ricci, or I remember, the night. I don't know, Radek Bonk did something crazy or whatever.
Yeah.
You think of a middle of the
One day we'll be like, Lars Eller scored 4 goals in a game. Do you remember that? He did the 360 in Montreal.
But do you remember Thomas Hurdle's 4-goal game?
Right.
And then Joe Thornton said that thing?
That's the best part about Thomas Hurdle's 4-goal game is Joe Thornton's comment afterwards.
Oh, yeah.
Honestly.
It completely overshadowed
Yeah. The fact that it was beautiful, too.
I believe it was also Marty Biron's last NHL game.
It was.
And Marty's a beauty of a guy, but he sort of tells the story. He knew it was over.
Sniped him right into retirement.
Some 18-year-old kid's going through his legs.
Wow.
Scoring 4 on him.
And a formerly pretty dominant goaltender, right? I mean,
that's good.
He had some really good years in Buffalo. Going into free agency then, Toronto Maple Leaf fans, should we expect a huge offer on Steven Stamkos's desk or his agent's computer? Or I don't want to say that agents, they don't drop those on desks anymore. I think
they faxed it in.
Yeah, they fax it over.
Well, it's still unclear. Actually, the one thing Newport, his agents out in Mississauga, have done with some of their big free agents is essentially open up the office and have teams come in and present different offers. They did that with Zach Parise a couple years ago when he was free agent and signed in Minnesota. I think Brad Richards got that same treatment.
That was Brad Richards.
Because I heard a story. I think it might have been Cliff Fletcher's second go around with the Leafs when the Leafs went in, and I heard a story about their presentation. And so
that was the year Brian Burke got heat because he went to Afghanistan.
Right.
Yes, I remember that. What story did you hear about?
Just that I think it fell a bit short, and I think it now you're filling out the details there. It's just that Brian Burke had gone to Afghanistan, which obviously spawned more hot takes, and then that the Leafs sort of like there were stories from that I think the LA Kings, were they in big on Richards? I think they'd sent like some ridiculous bottle of wine because Richards is a big wine guy and he likes golf, and they said you're getting a membership of this club. Like he was truly being wined and dined, and I think that the Leafs just had they signed him at that point for what he signed for, we would be kicking them for it right now. So maybe it was smart, and maybe I don't remember the specifics. Maybe they didn't really want him, but they felt like they had to kind of do a token offer. So
right.
So it's all right. Tim Connolly.
That's
got Tim Connolly. It worked out.
That's right. Well, sometimes the Leafs are saved from their own almost stupidity by other GM stupidity, i.e., like Dave Bolin, right? You think about that contract. They wanted to give him $5 million, and he signed for, was it 5.5?
I believe, the Leafs offered 5 times 5. He got 5 times 5.5.
Yeah, and that is a wow. That's one of those deals that we know about, and who knows what we don't know about, where people overvalue a guy, they fall in love with their own player. Yeah, Chris.
probably the almost trades too. The same thing can happen. There's a lot of almost trades out there that could have been disastrous, right? I remember there was the trade, and gosh, I should have thought of this morning. Johnny Gaudreau was involved when he was just a prospect in a potential trade somewhere that would have been a disaster for the Flames. If it comes to me, we'll revisit it later. But I mean, this stuff does happen all the time, right?
Right.
And sometimes prospects get traded and then they become nothing. I mean, there's a lot of that goes on, and look, there's luck in some of this too.
Do you expect the Leafs to show up at Newport then? And
they have to show face. There's no way. I mean, Steve Dangle's going to like have a burning. He'll be leading the charge for the Dangle Navy. Will be charging into the offices on Bay Street. Like,
I've never been more conflicted on a player because I am so gun shy about offering that much money to anybody. And yeah, like you said, if they don't make even an offer, I'll be completely up in arms. Like I don't know how to feel.
This is the way I look at it, though. If you're Steven Stamkos, there's literally nowhere better to sign than Tampa. Honestly, from any vantage point, and I say that as someone who lives in Toronto and loves it here, but he's got a great life, the income tax situation. He could literally win a Stanley Cup next year with the Lightning, which is a team he's grown up with. Those guys are his buddies. I mean, the grass is not always greener, and lots of free agents have found that out. And I just feel like if he ever came here on a monster deal, that his quality of life would be hurt, and the team might not be anywhere near good enough while he's still a really good player. So there's a massive risk if he does that. And I've thought about this because there is a paucity of information around the situation. I mean, even the best of the best in our industry are getting no sniffs, if you've noticed in the coverage, on exactly what everyone's thinking here. And we're all doing our best. But I've put it through his mind and like, man, why would you leave the Lightning right now? Like, you literally might be watching him next June win a Stanley Cup.
I think you're absolutely right.
Well, but then if you're the Lightning and you know that, and you know Victor Hedman's up, why do you put the money towards Steven Stamkos?
Well, that's why they're trying to get him to take less. It's the whole hometown discount, keep the team together kind of scenario. And I guess there's where maybe we're finding our way to the true thing here. It's money. Well, this is his one chance, we'll acknowledge, to make a ridiculous amount of money, especially
generational.
Especially if he goes to July 1st. Although there's not a ton of teams I could see in a situation to open up the bank for him, but there'll be a couple.
What are the odds he signs like a 2-year deal? You know, he realizes, okay, this is the best
doing the
place
Marian
to be
Hossa
currently. Maybe.
You know, we got to know more about his blood clot issue to know about that, because I mean, from everyone has said that this is total one-time thing. It's in an area of the body, his collarbone, as opposed to the leg, which is more serious for blood clots, that it's not likely to reoccur. You know, I'm no doctor on this, but if he has concerns that maybe his career is cut short by health, like even any small percentage, he's probably more inclined to take the longer guaranteed deal. But if truly it is as it's been presented, maybe you do take that risk. And you know, there's worse ideas. There really is, and I think it can be patched up. I mean, for one thing, I spent a ton of time around the Lightning because they've been good, and the team here hasn't been. So I've been on the road a lot in the playoffs the last few years. That team is like a band of brothers. Like, there's a real kind of brotherhood the Lightning have, and that's the reason I think that you saw Drouin go away and come back and be a part of the team and have it not be an issue. I think for anything that's gone on here, that there's a lot of ways for them to make good and patch this up. So we'll see. That being said, it's what, June 16th?
Yes.
Like, no other free agent in the salary cap era that's anywhere near as good as Steven Stamkos has waited till June 16th and still been unsigned. So he's literally run 4/5 of the marathon. I'm sure the sweat's building up. The fatigue's setting in, but I mean, it'd be crazy. It'd be a real surprise if he signed now, because why go this far
and then not commit
and
to
not
it.
At least look behind the door. And then when you look behind the door, I mean, that's what Daniel Alfredson said about the Sens. The minute that he started opening his mind to other possibilities, it was over for him in Ottawa. And maybe that's what will happen to Steven as well.
Now, what are the odds things come to fruition, like you said, when that window opens on day 2 of the draft?
That's a benefit he has. I mean, but then if he gets that far, I mean, he's making a deal by that point. I mean, any team that wants him, if he's unsigned on June 25th, is coming in 8 a.m. They're at Don Meehan's hotel door, like bringing him room service with breakfast and a large contract, although it can't be the official contract, written on a napkin, what the contract may look like in a hypothetical scenario in 6 days from now or whatever. They have to kind of, they can't sign official deals during that period. But
write it on a map of Mississauga.
Right. Yeah, hypothetical.
This is what his new phone number would be.
905, which, by the way, is more or less than we're offering you.
Right. Yeah.
Jesus.
I like what you did there.
I mean, it's going to be fascinating. I really don't believe he's coming to the Leafs. I don't.
Wow.
In my heart of hearts. I've said that a couple other times, but I'm willing to be wrong on this one. I don't feel. But my sense is it's not going to happen.
See, I think both sides are willing to be wrong on this one because either way, it's still a pretty good scenario. I mean, you have the Toronto Maple Leafs bringing in Austin Matthews, William Nylander, Mitch Marner, and Soshnikov, and all these guys that are coming up that are going to be this young kind of crew of people, right?
Those guys can be legends. Like if the Leafs get good, these guys are going to be
legends. They will be on Legends Row.
Yeah.
If they're not, which we've seen other teams kind of rise up and fall short, I mean, I guess they'll just be joining a long list. But I mean, these guys have an opportunity, is all I'm saying. I mean.
Well, who was the Leafs' last homegrown bona fide star? Like even Matt Sundin, you could argue was homegrown, but
he'd had a 100-point season in Quebec already.
He was a Nordique.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
he was the first overall pick of the Nordiques. Like it might be Wendell Clark. It wasn't Gilmore. It wasn't Anderchuk. Might be Felix Potvin.
Sergei Berzin. No, I don't know. I don't know.
Stajan.
Not Curtis Joseph. Like Matt Stajan is like in the top half. Like. Yeah. Top quarter of homegrown talent.
Well, and he was drafted in the 20s, right? He was actually a good pick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Alex Steen too.
Well, he's the most recent homegrown superstar. He just wasn't. He grew up here and then became a star elsewhere.
But exactly.
They're also these last few drafts though. This is the highest they've picked since the 80s. Going back to Morgan Riley at 5, Marner at 4, obviously Matthews at 1. I mean, they haven't had those picks in the last 20 years either. So. I mean, not that you only get a star out of that slot, but that's your best chance.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and eventually, sometimes you get your Duncan Keiths and PKs in your second round, but I mean, you have to have a great scouting team, and we never have. So it's kind of nice to have, or we haven't recently. And in the 90s, it was not a priority.
At producing NHLers. They just, they have though. Like they actually have a decent batting average.
I know.
Like that 06 draft, they had like 6 players, but they were. Just for, I mean, Reimer was one of them. Help me out here. Kuhlman.
Gunnarsson, Komarov.
I mean, they've produced NHL players out of their drafts. They just haven't found the diamond in the rough.
I think they had an NHL player out of almost every pick from that draft. I think Yuri Tlusty was the first rounder. I know that because that was my draft year and they didn't pick me.
It was Tlusty, Kuhlman, Reimer, Holzer, Stahlberg, Komarov.
What a fantastic draft.
That's a great draft.
I mean, they produced NHLers at every pick.
Yeah.
And what was the last one? Like what number?
180.
Overall? 180.
Komarov was late.
If you're grabbing NHL players at 180, you've done well.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So just to defend them a little bit, they haven't been a horrible drafting team. They haven't been a properly run team from top to bottom. Frankly, until I actually believe in these guys now, and they know that. I mean, I really am impressed with Brendan Shanahan. Like, truly, I think he gets it. And the conversations we've had, I think his mindset is right where Leafs fans would want it to be. That he is prepared for this to take a little bit of time, and was prepared to live through this last season, even though it must have killed him some nights watching that team. And they have a very specific idea about what they want to build here, and. They're not building a small duplex in Scarborough. They're building like the piece de resistance. I mean, we'll see if we get there. There's lots of guys around the league with the same thing, but for the first time, I do feel like we have the right people in the city running the team to create a real run of success. And now we'll see how they do.
So we got to go on Sportsnet 590 The Fan. Believe it or not, we've already done a full radio show. It's crazy. But in the off-air portion, Chris, we're going to ask you a little bit more about your career and about what you expect to happen around the NHL going into the draft and the free agency. This is like the most interesting time of the year.
It's the best.
It really is.
I mean, the best and the worst. I'm feeling kind of tired, but
I can imagine.
But it's awesome. I mean, I love this stuff. I love news, so there's lots of news.
So, Chris, there's so much to cover with you, and we have like a million questions, but I want to make sure that we get to these things first. First off, James Reimer.
I remember him. I know him well.
You do know him well. You've covered him for many, many years.
Right from the beginning.
He is a San Jose Shark for the moment, and then I guess the contract's up. Where do you think he goes?
I would have said Carolina.
Really?
And then Cam Ward just signed. So
Carolina? Really?
I would have thought that was a good fit for him. Really. I mean, there's only a few teams that are in the ballpark. The Leafs need a goalie. Mm-hmm. Calgary Flames need a goalie. Carolina did need a goalie and maybe arguably still does if they find a way to move Eddie Lack, even after signing Cam Ward. But the list kind of slows down there. I mean, certainly say Anaheim with John Gibson and Freddie Anderson are likely to trade one of those guys. So maybe if they trade one, they'll be in the market for a free agent. But, there's not a lot of spots if he wants to be a number one or a kind of or 1B or whatever. And so now I would say Calgary is in the, if we were in the Vegas setting the odds, that they'd be the clubhouse leader.
Funny that Carolina makes the trade for Eddie Lack and probably assumes that he's going to be the guy that takes the reins from Cam Ward, and now it seems like that scenario is completely flipped on its head.
That's goaltending, and
they've had a couple guys.
The interesting thing about Martin Jones actually in San Jose is that so often when you trade for that guy who's the really well thought of backup and you give him the number one job, it doesn't work out the way you planned on it. What's interesting in that case is that it did. But that's where Eddie Lack was. He had a great year in Vancouver the year before, showed a lot of promise, and they had to move a goalie, and Carolina thought they were being smart. They didn't give up much in that trade, a couple of draft picks.
I think it was a third and a seventh.
Yeah, but really,
nothing.
It's like the kind of thing you see traded for like a 6D at the deadline.
Yeah.
Like it's in terms of a gamble, it's not one. But then you give him a decent deal and you put him in that spot, and the flower doesn't grow. And
well, to be fair, they didn't put a great team in front of him either.
No. And he could bounce back too. I mean, it's sometimes one bad year ends at one. It's not over for him by any stretch. But for James Reimer, it's fascinating because there's still a fit here in Toronto, but I really don't get the sense that's going to happen. I don't know. He sold his house. That's like the big thing in my mind. He reluctantly admitted to me that he sold his house when I was covering him at the Cup final. We were chatting one day, and he just said the market was really good. And
market is good.
Do you know what?
Yeah.
It's something people. I was gonna say something people of the city could actually understand. I'm sure maybe he was able to make a pretty good profit on what he paid, and he didn't know for sure if he's coming back. So why not sell it? And if you get a new deal, you can buy. He did say you can buy a new place, but to me, I think that. I don't think he thought he was getting traded at the end of the day. There were some talks last year between his agent and Lou Lamoriello on an extension, and I think James was as fond of this place, this city, this team as the fans were largely of him, and that had to hurt him on some level. He didn't say that, but I just got that sense. You know what though? As per our conversation earlier, James Reimer stays a Leaf. Do they finish 30th? Probably not. Probably not. Just saying. Wow. Just saying. Like, if I'm the Leafs, I do the exact same thing. And I love James Reimer. Tim Murray is screaming internally because of what he gave Michael Neuwirth away for. Right? He's just... Tim Murray did all the things that the Leafs did, although he was far more intentional about it. He traded down on his trade downs. Yeah. Anders Lindback, new starter. Here we go. Oh, that was unbelievable. And still didn't get that number one overall pick, right? But he got Jack Eichel. In a year where it was easier to get it. Right? Arguably. Yeah. Technically. Yeah. Anyway, because it's Edmonton, and Edmonton always pulls the rabbit out of the hat when it comes to the draft. But, right. But in hindsight, what you're describing here is the Leafs looked more and more like a tank from February on. They sure did. Early in the season, it didn't to me. Mm-hmm. I mean, the team played pretty well for what they were. But it started the lineup decisions, pulling the young guys up, sending them down maybe if there was a little too much success. Putting Garrett Sparks in repeatedly when clearly he was struggling with his confidence. I don't know. Felt like a bit of a tank. Okay. There were times where you saw Nylander and you're like, oh, this is why he's been on the Marlies all season, because he was just crushing it. Connor Brown had that 3-point game, and they were actually kind of turning a corner. Then I think he was sent down right after that 3-point Connor game. Brown was for sure. That was in Florida, and he was sent down right after. Tobias Lindbergh on the power play. Meanwhile, he's a healthy scratch for the Marlies in the playoffs. That's literally like NHL 16 sort of thing. Because like in NHL 16, if you have like a be a player mode and you make it all the way to the NHL, you could score like 6 points in a night and they'll still send you down. Right. But it for real happens. And I'm glad you explained that to the old guy. That was like right over my head. I figured that you were way too busy to be playing NHL video games. That's all. I don't even own a console. So see, that when I was a kid, you said Dangle Navy earlier, so I thought you were up on like the cool young hip stuff. Oh, he's on Twitter, you know. You said Dangle? Yeah, he did. Yeah. What? He knows what's up. He probably listened to that episode where Steve hates that, by the way. Absolutely hates it. Yeah. No, I love it now. I definitely love it. I figured it would feed his ego. I mean, no. He just went over. We created it because it was we were going through like what the big stars, the big music stars have as their names of their fans, and Rihanna's happens to be Rihanna's Navy, which makes no sense other than the fact she was in a really bad movie called Battlefield or Battleship. She did a remake of the board game.
in movie form.
That actually happened?
Yeah, with
It's a
Liam
movie.
Neeson.
Oh
yeah,
my God.
it was
Yeah.
a big movie.
Of course, Liam Neeson
Liam Neeson was in it, like, I have a particular set of skills, and then it
fights a bunch of wolves on a boat.
yeah, and then she that was good. Then she basically created this Navy thing, and it's never gone away.
Wow.
So she started calling the fans the Navy, so now it's Dangle Navy.
It's like how every sports team has a nation attached to it.
yes,
Right?
Yes. Leafs Nation.
Dangle Nation could work, though.
It could.
But it's too late. Cat's out of the bag.
That's right.
you're right.
Thank you.
The
Chris.
Navy has loaded the ship, headed for port.
So you mentioned, and I can't remember whether it was on the air or off, but you said that when Randy Carlyle was was the Leafs head coach, that he was a pleasant guy to deal with. In press conferences and that sort of thing. Obviously, we know how that relationship ended. We don't need to talk about the Carlisle era as a Leaf.
He was kind of like your dad, though, I got to say. Because
Oh, he
every
was?
once in a while, maybe you go down a line of questioning and he get terse with you. And for some reason, he used to call me Johnny, which no one ever... Like literally, that's never been. I've had various nicknames over my years playing sports or whatever,
Johnny.
but no one ever called me Johnny. But he called me Johnny.
Can I explain that to you? He fully thought your name was Johnny.
Could be. But I remember once we kind of.
Johnny Chris Stone.
Every once in a while,
Stun.
you kind of get into him with a bit like where he's like, Johnny, what do you want? But then like the next day, he kind of like poke you on the shoulder and be like, you're still cute. Like say like a kid, like tussle your hair. Not
I shown you
literally,
my
but
toaster? I mean, yeah.
What I'm saying is that what I admired about him though is that it was never personal. In all seriousness, out of this is that you could kind of get into it, and the next day everyone's got a job to do, and so I appreciated that because especially that season when I traveled every day with him, I had to be like a gnat, just like. Hey, Randy, what do you think about this?
Yeah, what do you
Johnny
think?
questions.
7th loss in a row, Randy. What do you think? Like I can understand why, but also it's my job. I mean, you're put in a high pressure environment sometimes, and it gets a little tense.
So
I can't get over that.
that is
Do you know
so
what's
funny.
great? This is the truth. So I was on Hockey Central Noon yesterday, co-hosting with Gord Stellick, and Randy Carlyle, just hired by the Anaheim Ducks, is our guest. And apparently, when he called in. And they're in the back, and he goes, "Oh, it's Johnny." And he still calls me Johnny. I guess I didn't hear that, but the producer relayed that to me.
That
he got excited
funny.
that it was me. So
He fully thinks your name is John.
So what do you think about him being hired in Anaheim?
bold play. But
Bold strategy.
but I don't think
Let's
it's
see if it pays off.
I don't think it's as bad as I've largely seen it characterized, only because it's very specific to that team, right? So he's had those players, and it's desperate, but I'm not sure what the better choice was to try to make them win now. I'm not saying there is.
Did they make the right move in firing?
No,
Boudreaux? Okay.
that's where the mistake started to me. I would double down on Bruce Boudreau. I would say, what are the odds we lose a 5th Game 7 after losing a Game 6? I mean, literally, if he got any goaltending in any of those games, they go on a long run. Maybe they don't win a Stanley Cup, but you're not even thinking about firing him. I mean, how well he's done with that organization, that's where I would have stopped it. And so now look, you've already made one giant mistake, so you're in a hole. And what are you going to do? I mean, with Randy, I think that there's a chance that it's a much better team than he had in Toronto. He's got assistants that have been there and we're running that team, so I don't think that necessarily tactically he's going to get his hands all over everything. And he's going to be a bit of a taskmaster. He's going to hold the feet to the fire, because the unspoken part of the Ducks last year and their crappy start was that, they blame their stars for that. That's why Bruce didn't get fired last year in the middle of the season, is because they put it on Getzlaf and Perry and said that those guys weren't ready to play to start of the year. I think the insinuation was they weren't in shape or bringing the proper level. And I think this is kind of a bit of not a shot, but this is meant to get their attention, because they know what Randy's all about, and he's going to make it hard on them in some ways. But I don't think he's going to come in there and redrop the power play and everything. So things that have been going well, I could still see going well, and they're trying to get those guys a little bit more out of that. So they're squeezing juice out of like a rock that's almost fully been there. But in this circumstance, I can understand the hiring. I don't understand the Boudreau firing at all.
Okay,
really.
I was going to ask you about that next. What was that? That doesn't make any sense.
It's an overreaction. I mean, because they've lost in a similar way each year. So you read into the coach. I mean, so we have a great team every year in the regular season, but we keep losing Game 6 and then Game 7 in a big series. I don't know. The year before it was the Western Conference Final, the big series, by the way, where they easily could have beat the Blackhawks.
Yeah.
And maybe win that Stanley Cup. I mean, I I don't know. I don't get it. I think Bruce is going to do great things in Minnesota, though. I mean, that's a suspect in some ways.
Man, I forgot he was even there.
Yeah.
That's a suspect core in some ways because they're getting older and lots of no move clauses, and they're going to have to do some juggling. But every team he goes to gets better. So great hiring by them. How can I explain a move I don't understand?
Okay.
Other than I think it's desperate. I mean, they didn't win a Stanley Cup.
Well, speaking of desperate, they were pretty bad earlier in the season. First month and a half, I think they were keeping pace with the Leafs. I was told by someone that they actually came pretty close to firing him then. And
sure.
Potentially hiring Carlisle then. How close do you think that came? Did you hear anything?
I think it was close. I mean, the thing with Randy, so he moved back to California after he's fired by the Leafs. He kept a place down in Southern California, and he'd been going to game scouting there all the time. So he's been around the building, and I'm not saying I'm not in any way saying he was interfering, but I mean he was top of mind and he was watching that team, which is, one thing. If you're going to make a midseason coaching change, it's a benefit to have a guy who's really been paying attention to the team and been around the organization, kind of has a feel for what's going on. So that would have made some sense too, but I just won't be surprised if we're doing this podcast in November and the Ducks are doing well. And the story around Randy is totally different than it is today.
I expect the Ducks to come out of the gate hot.
But that's the thing, is that when they don't, that's the story. Right, that is the story, and the fact that they had one of the NHL's probably winningest coaches in the regular season ever, at least specifically percentage-wise, right?
7 division titles in 8 seasons as a head coach, I believe.
He's something like the fastest coach or the second fastest coach to 300 and or 400 wins.
Don Cherry points out that they didn't have shootout wins in his day, though.
Oh, fair enough.
I've heard him say that. I've heard him say that a couple times because I think he might have beat Don for one of those records. So.
And we didn't have shootouts back in the day. I don't know if those Bruins teams would have won a whole lot of shootouts
and
there.
Don chose the Colorado team over the Toronto Maple Leafs to coach too. So he did. I would say that to his face.
Someone's seen the documentary.
Yeah, I'm just saying he could have gone coach the Leafs with Harold Ballard. But I think it's just such a weird thing because as a Leaf fan and as a hockey fan, you look at Anaheim. And you've got 2 potential starting goaltenders. You've got 2 superstars at the top of their career and a second-line guy who was signed to way too much money in Ryan Kessler, but is still a great playoff performer, a great, from what we hear, heart and soul guy, although he is a little bit ornery towards what we
mixed.
I've heard, I hear things both ways, but I mean, he was a hero for the Vancouver Canucks. This is a team that really does have its shit together.
We can swear now.
We can swear now, by the way. Yeah. It's so surprising to see that, and then for Randy Carlisle, a coach with already a history in Anaheim and obviously in Toronto, to go back there it's just very, very strange. Very strange. It's an odd situation.
I'm surprised they didn't perform stronger than they did in these past playoffs.
Yeah, Nashville. I didn't see that coming. That was probably my biggest early round surprise, actually.
Well, and they pushed the Sharks to 7 too.
Right. That's what I mean. I didn't think they were going to last 6 in the whole playoffs. And then that was one of the teams I was wrong about. I mean, it wasn't impossible to see St. Louis beating Chicago. No. Even San Jose, LA. I don't know.
I was surprised it was 5. I wasn't surprised it was San Jose.
Right. Anze Kopitar, new Kings captain. Officially? As it happens, yes, they announced.
There you go.
Wow.
God, that's got to be awkward.
For Dustin Brown?
That's got to be so awkward.
That contract is that...
The Sharks have made it work, though. They've had a few different runs of that.
Yeah. There were times where it looked like it might not have been working. But, Stanley Cup final.
That Dustin Brown contract is pretty... when you look at that deal, it goes through 2022?
He's future captain of the Las Vegas whatevers. Maybe. Unless he's got one of those fancy little no trade
movement
clauses.
cuts. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure he's not going to... He might waive that.
Yeah.
I mean, who wants to stick around a party where they're not invited or no longer welcome?
Some people.
Right.
I don't know about him.
Yeah, no. Okay, so Chris, for you, going into this, again, the most interesting time of the year, what's the thing that you're watching the closest right now? What's the thing that's most interesting to you that maybe it's not kind of piquing people's interest at the moment?
I'm a buyout nerd, so I'm kind of excited by this buyout window to see what happens, mostly because the biggest issue for teams looking forward to an expansion draft as 2017 is that they're stuck with their no movement players with no movement clauses as being counting against the players they have to protect. And so I'm curious to see if we see different kinds of buyouts, guys that are still maybe effective, but you wouldn't want to have to be guaranteed to protect this year. So because I'm a nerd, admittedly, for like hockey transactions, the CBA, I
kind of should be.
But I like to figure out what teams are doing, right? Or like why are decisions made? I mean, I'm a bit less of seeing some contract and just yelling, "What are these idiots doing?" and trying to figure out the why behind it. Because when you understand why the decisions are being made, sometimes you get a little more clarity. Plus, you start to understand what's to come. So I think we're going to see a lot of buyouts here in the next week leading up to the draft and even into June 30th when the period closes. And that will be the first hint to me that teams are actually making decisions already based on the expansion draft. Because we don't know that yet. We just suspect that's going to happen. But the other one will be Marc-Andre Fleury. Because for the exact same reasons, clearly the Penguins are going to want to protect Matt Murray, but if they have Fleury on their roster next June, they have no option. They have to protect Fleury instead. So somehow he's going to end up somewhere else, but the hows and whys and whats.
Well, and what about, Anderson and Gibson, you mentioned, Steve, you were going to say?
Well, I was going to say, so you obviously covered the whole playoffs here at the Stanley Cup final. Did my eyes deceive me, or did Marc-Andre Fleury get the cup before Murray?
He did.
He did.
He was fourth, I believe.
Right.
Daly
super
after Crosby,
on.
and then Dupuis, and then Fleury.
And the second I saw that, the overreaction portion of my brain was, he's done with this team.
He's done. He is. And the thing about it, this isn't just a goalie. Like, he's the most popular player of the Crosby era in that dressing room. I'm not saying for fans, but for the players. Like, they love this guy. I was there the one game against Tampa he started, and it was just like kids again. Like, they were so excited to see him get that opportunity. And so it'll be a big moment kind of for the core of that team. The only bigger piece is if they ever traded one of Crosby or Malkin. I mean, those three guys have been together their entire times in the NHL, basically. And look at the writings on the wall now. I mean, Mark is going to go some way or another. And so that's a story. It's not yet bubbling because literally nobody is probably sober in Pittsburgh right now. Still. And justifiably so, I should add. I mean, they just had their big parade yesterday. But at some point here in the next week or so, probably at the draft, they might have to entertain trading kind of the heart and soul of the team. And
who would be a potential suitor?
Le Maple Leafs to Toronto.
You think so?
I think so. I mean, there's a fit there. The thing, he's not that overpaid. I think he was $575 his cap hit.
It's pretty fair.
I mean, considering how he did in the regular season, I don't know if he's overpaid at all.
That's what I'm saying.
And he's a starting goaltender still, right?
It's just Matt Murray kicked ass. He kicked ass, plain and simple.
Right, and sort of the future came a little sooner than anyone would have imagined. I mean, Matt Murray doesn't play a playoff game if Fleury doesn't get a second concussion on March 31st. Mm-hmm. And maybe they even go out in the second round. Who knows? But we don't even know. Like the sort of great untold Matt Murray story waits another year because he lit up the AHL, but that's certainly no guarantee of that you can win 15 playoff
so did Jonas
games.
Gustafsson.
Yeah,
in his brief stint. So did Jonathan Bernier. Not at that age, but
yeah,
I don't know. I'm just going with my Leaf numbers.
And is it the Leafs and Penguins have obviously they've been trade partners twice in the last couple of years, and with the Winnick deal, and then of course the Kessel deal, and obviously there's something there that they get along with each other.
Two of the longest tenured GMs between Lamoriello and Rutherford. Although the Kessel and Winnick deals were made, Kessel deal was made by Kyle Dubas ostensibly with Brendan Shanahan. There was before Lou was hired, but still, I mean, let's face it, these guys know each other. I mean, anyone could deal with anyone, and when you get to goalies, there's only so many teams with the need.
Right.
I mean, there's only so many. With Pittsburgh starts looking around the league at the depth charts and saying, like, where's there a fit? Toronto's going to be one of the few places he comes up with as a possibility, and it'd be intriguing.
What would a deal like that look like?
Well, usually it's pretty good for the team getting the goalie. I mean, maybe I got to think at the absolute top, it's a first rounder. Really, like for goaltenders,
maybe their own.
I am not saying, but I'm saying. I mean, there could be a starting point there. I mean, they reacquired.
What about taking on Bernier too? Because he's got the 40. I mean, he makes less than Fleury, but that you got to get rid of some salary.
And it's 1 year,
right? Yeah, it is. It's one last year.
He backs up goalie.
Yeah, you back up Matt Murray. He's played a lot of games in the NHL. You know he can step in from time to time.
And if he returns to the old Jonathan Bernier,
but it wouldn't be. It would not be a straight. It wouldn't be a straight up swap though.
I mean, there's definitely a fit there. And so that's one of the stories that's not yet percolating that I think is going to take on, because I would think that this is going to happen pretty quickly. I mean, if they've made that decision, today Jim Rutherford did tell the press that in a perfect world he'd like to keep them both. I think the unstated part of that is this isn't a perfect world, and he has a 12-team no trade list, so they could just trade him to one of those 12 teams without it. But I would think that if they're going to want a nice exit here, one way or another, and respect what the guy's done for the organization. And look, the Penguins are a team that has some cap issues too, so getting rid of his salary makes sense on some levels as well. But you do want to make sure. I mean, Matt Murray had a great playoffs, but you want to make sure you got some insurance behind him, because he's never played 60 games in the NHL. And that's what you're going to be asking him to do next year if you do trade Fleury. So,
oh boy, how confident are they in Jeff Zatkoff as maybe a backup?
They love the guy. I mean, he's one of my. The cool part about getting to go out and cover the playoffs with another team is you learn about players you would never know about. Because you're around. Basically, you're a beat guy. I was a beat guy for the Pittsburgh Penguins for 8 weeks, and so I knew Jeff Zatkoff's name. I didn't know anything about him. Turns out to be one of just the gems of their dressing room. Just a super awesome guy. And believe it or not, as for a backup goaltender, that's like part of the credentials, because part of your job is you're kind of sacrificing your whole life to play 10 games, right? And usually bad games, like the back-to-back when the team is going to suck and you're probably not winning. And you got to still be like the happy-go-lucky guy. You stay on for long practices. I mean, the part of that job when you're a true backup is to be a good guy about it. And Jeff certainly hits those credentials. Even when he was the third stringer this year, apparently he was just the best. So there's a possibility.
They did a chant for him. He played like one game. And did you see that?
He won a playoff game.
Mr. Game 1. Mr. Game 1. Mr. Game 1. Insane.
And it's great. I actually chatted with them the morning before Game 5 that they could have won in Pittsburgh. And I said, so if the guys win, are you going to go on the ice? He's like, yeah, I won a game. He's like, if I didn't win that game, he probably wouldn't have put those whole pads and everything on in San Jose to go out there. But he's like, I felt like I earned it. And I tend to agree with that. I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah, of course he did. He contributed.
Pittsburgh was my favorite to win that series easily. But then I see Jeff Zatkoff starting Game 1. I'm like, I don't know. And
well, I don't think anybody knew. I mean, even Jeff, to be fair. I mean, he'd never played a game like that. And to get that first win, who knows? Because he played the second game too. They lost that one. And then Murray came back. But you just never know. They're in an 0-2 hole. If he doesn't win the first game, maybe it gets away from them quickly. The playoffs are crazy.
Yes,
it's so hard to win. I mean, no wonder nobody repeats.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You got to be lucky.
You need some amount of luck,
matter.
Right? Even health luck.
Matchups.
Not necessarily luck a puck off the glass and through the goalie's legs from the other end or something. Some of it is just like Sidney Crosby didn't get injured in these playoffs, so that probably helped.
The example I bring up, it seems like every show, in 2011, the Vancouver Canucks were so clearly the best team in the NHL and the best team in the playoffs, but they had to use 13 defensemen.
Right.
They used 13 defensemen.
They got Aaron roamed. Remember? 4-game suspension.
Brutal. I mean, that...
Mason Raymond broke his back at the start of one of the games in the final.
It was...
Game 3 or 4.
Something like that.
It's 10 seconds in. It was so weird.
Ryan Kessler was playing with, God knows, maybe one limb. It was just brutal. They were head and shoulders above any other team in the NHL, but it wasn't their time.
It wasn't their time.
So there's a tremendous. I think of the Penguins. Some of the teams the Penguins have had in the regular season during the 7 years in the desert were pretty darn good.
The Capitals. Jeez. So I want to bring it back to the goaltender for just a quick sec. What are the chances? So you see a fit with Pittsburgh and Toronto. Do you see a fit with Anaheim and Toronto?
Oh yeah, I mean
with Anderson or Gibson.
I think Anderson is the guy the Leafs are most interested in. That's not to say they wouldn't trade for Gibson. The thing is with Gibson, and help me out, the cap hit I think is $2.3 million, and for 3 more years. So that's insanely cheap. And Anaheim, first of all, is on an internal budget, but secondly has a bunch of restricted free agents to sign: Rickard Rakell, Sami Vatanen. I mean, some other guys that could be traded. Hampus Lindholm needs a new deal. So, Calgary and Toronto I see as the 2 suitors for Anderson. I thought Carolina too. What's interesting is Carolina drafted Freddie Anderson. He refused to sign there because he didn't like the situation going behind Cam Ward, and then re-entered the draft, and Anaheim got him. So it would have been a funny full circle kind of thing.
Jeez. Yes.
if they went for him.
Gibson is 2.3 through
2.3.
2020.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's insane. Like, if he is any good, if he's anywhere near the goaltender everyone seems to think he is, it's hard to, because Freddie Anderson needs a contract too. Mm-hmm. And you're probably starting that one with a 5 based on his numbers.
So we keep coming back to Calgary and Toronto. Like, it seems like, I mean, how many goalies are available? How many spots are available? It seems like the Leafs will get one of the guys we've mentioned today. It sure seems like it.
Or Dallas will get them all.
They'll
just put $50 million into 5 goaltenders.
Oh, do they need it so bad?
Well, but Steve, they've got 2 $5 million goaltenders who did great.
Oh my God. Like, they're a cup contender. They fixed that problem. Cup contender instantly. They're a cup contender with the goalies they have. But Lettinen and Niemi.
It's going to take some cap voodoo there to figure that.
Know.
Well, there's certain teams that just decide that they don't have a cap anymore. I
Yeah.
mean, there are teams that, like, LA's another one of them, Chicago's another one, where they're like, yeah, there's a cap, but we don't really. I mean, we don't play by those rules.
Right, but so do they buy out one of the goalies? I mean,
The
I don't know.
Blackhawks get Malkin.
I don't know. I don't know what they do. That's the thing. It seems to be like they've kind of hamstrung themselves to these goalies that had always showed flashes, but never fully became the A+.
right.
And I mean, Antti Raanta has won a Stanley Cup, or Antti Niemi, sorry, has won a Stanley Cup, but
Antti Raanta too, sort of.
sort of. Antti Raanta did too, yeah.
Reluctantly won a Stanley Cup.
But that's the thing is that it for them, I would think they got to be in the goaltending market for sure. But it would be a goaltender plus a high value asset if you have to take on that $5 million contract.
That's what they got to try to convince someone to do. Take one of those deals back, and then sweeten it, obviously.
Yeah.
And as we saw with the deal that Carolina and Chicago made, I mean, the price of sweetening a deal can be a lot.
Teuvo Teravainen.
There's no way they want to get rid of Teuvo Teravainen, like in any universe. I mean, that must have just been they ground them right down to the last minute. And
I think someone finally said to the Blackhawks, "What are you going to do? Like, we have the power here. I know you have the 3 cups in 6 years. We have the power. We have something you need."
And I guess
desperately.
that's the trade-off of being a good team is that you have all the power on the ice, none of it when it comes to negotiating.
I mean,
Right.
With other teams.
they slithered. They found their way out of situations. They finally found themselves in a corner they couldn't get out of. You're screwed. Take the second and third, stupid. Give us Teuvo.
well, and there's only about 3 teams in the league right now that you can look at that can take on bad contracts, like that have any room to. And this came up, New Jersey got Mark Savard's rights from Florida.
Yep.
But when Florida was looking to deal that, they look at it and they're like, okay, Arizona can do this, New Jersey can do this, Carolina can do this, and then it's not as easy. And not to say there aren't other teams that could do it, but not very many would. And so this is the issue with the cap is so few teams really have money to spend, like actual money or it's place to just stash away a $4 million cap hit.
Just stash it.
That's one of the downsides of when we talk about are there going to be trades at the draft. The downside is there's not a lot of teams dealing with like surplus here that they can just, like even the Leafs of the last year or whatever, they were just like, we'll take all your sick and needy, right? But like clearly they're out of that mode now.
Right.
They're tight.
They don't.
They're tight now.
Well, yeah, they are. And I mean, and you talked about it a little bit earlier, or the last time you were on the show, sorry, it was that, Lupul is maybe potentially not going to even be at camp next year. Might be a long-term injury
This
reserve.
one is still on. I can't remember when we talked 3-4 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Nothing's changed. The only thing I know a little bit more is I'm reasonably sure Joffrey still wants to play and that he believes he's healthy. So there's really only 3 outcomes that are possible if that is indeed the case. They buy him out here before June 30th. They trade him, which would be difficult, but again, if they're taking back salary, not necessarily impossible. Or he plays for the Leafs. So, I don't really see if apparently he's injured. Sorry, not injured. Apparently he's healthy. So, maybe all the smoke that I was seeing on the horizon isn't going to come to fruition. But the fact remains, he still wasn't in the team picture. I don't believe on his Twitter profile it says he's still with the Leafs, or it doesn't say. There's
They
just
gave up his locker.
They gave up his locker, and he's nowhere to be seen since. Like he was healthy one day, he's played in Ottawa, and then he just disappeared. So.
I think last time we spoke to you, you were having a hard time getting a hold of him.
I haven't talked to him.
No, eh?
But I talked to some people that know him, and that's where I was left with the impression that he does want to play, and that he did have sports hernia surgery, and that he is interested in playing for the Leafs still. I mean, I think he loves it here. It's just the question is, are they going to let him play? And we'll see. I mean, who saw the Stefan Robida turn when he went through all of training camp to the last day, and then we never saw him again until the Quebec Pee Wee tournament, and someone tracked him down, and he said he's still rehabbing his injury, but.
I wonder what went on there.
Put it this way: Joffrey has not booked his own ticket to Robida Island.
Okay,
but if he ends up there, maybe someone has sent him there.
I still don't know what it would be if you're healthy. Let's say Robida is healthy. Let's say Lupul's healthy. How do you convince somebody to do that?
I think Lou Lamoriello just has a shed full of horse heads,
and you wake up beside one.
And these situations are different. I mean, I actually believe Stefan Robida, with all of his injuries, just can't play anymore. Like, I think in his case, it's a little less suspect. He's 38, 39 years old.
39. He probably wants to sit at home with his kids.
And the option for him might have been, so we send you to the Marlies, and you probably don't play, or you go home. And I can understand
take a bus to Albany, buddy?
Yeah.
Right. And so that one, other than it's kind of amusing that he disappeared, and information around it was always sparse and kind of like given to you in hushed whispers. So that part was amusing, but like I think that it's legit that he can't play. It's sort of like Chris Pronger in Philly. Yeah. Like, he literally just can't play anymore, and he can't retire because he's got to get paid. Mm-hmm. And there's sort of a cap. There's things that come out of that. The Joffrey situation is a little different because he's younger, and if he thinks he's healthy and he wants to play, there's nothing really that I don't think they can't. They have to pay him. They have to account for him some way in the salary cap. So.
Right.
So there was a report yesterday, I think, that Dave Bolland failed a physical.
Right.
So they can't buy him out.
That's true.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. What are the results, or what are the odds that, Lupul comes to camp, doesn't even pass a physical?
It's always possible. I mean, given his injury history, until we know he's passed, I mean, I can't say for sure he will. But if he feels, look, we're in June here, and he feels ready to play. So unless he aggravates some injury while training this summer, I mean, he thinks he's capable.
Well, the thing is with Joffrey Lupul is that when you do
he's in tremendous shape. I got to say, I mean, he actually is a little crestfallen. Like I fear that we have to do something to get the demons away, because his injuries have been so random and weird, and like, this isn't a case of a guy who, like, there's no jokes about him being overweight or not being committed as an athlete or anything like that. I mean, this guy's in tremendous shape. He just had some bad luck.
One of his more major injuries with the Leafs was he was in front of the net doing what he should be doing, and Dion Phaneuf slap shot just hit him in the arm, broke his arm.
Right.
Like, what do you do? What do you do? It's not his fault.
No,
it's not.
It could have been anyone.
Yeah.
Could have been anybody. Phaneuf scored a goal off Mikhail Grabowski's head once.
Yeah.
I saw it. I heard the crack from the media gondola. It could have happened to anybody. It happened to Joffrey Lupul. My favorite of all time, I don't know if you were covering the Leafs at this point, Carlo Koliakovo was still in the Leafs, and Ron Wilson
I was covering them then.
Yeah. Ron Wilson laid into him about his conditioning, and he's like, I broke my foot blocking a shot. He's like, it wasn't my fault. I blocked a shot. The puck hit me in the foot.
Oh, Ron Wilson. Ron Wilson.
I mean, I never met him. You did.
Let's not go down that trap door.
Okay.
You know, it's funny.
What did he call you?
No, I was just a young guy then. He probably didn't even know I was there.
Jeff Blair actually came out on the air once and said Ron Wilson, like he said this, he's the worst person I've ever met.
There is another.
Like he said it on the air. I was like, wow.
There's another reporter who I won't name who, at the drop of a hat, will tell you what a shithead Ron Wilson
I'm only quoting Jeff, and I think it's. I mean, this is the non-on-air portion.
Where Ron Wilson lost the media base was announcing his contract extension on Christmas Day.
What a dick! Yeah,
because that was a giant fuck you.
I remember thinking that was funny.
Anyone who'd found any reason to give him the benefit of the doubt lost it on Christmas morning while they were like with their kids and had to go to their laptop and be like, Ron Wilson got a contract extension. And that was it. And the best part about it to me was Brian Burke came out after and he goes, yeah, we actually signed it like 3 weeks ago. I just said it down, say whatever you want. Like when you feel the time is right. And Burke wasn't trying to bury him. I think he was saying like, just wait till the right point in the schedule or it's not going to be a distraction for the team or whatever. And he announced it on Twitter on Christmas morning. This is 100% true.
Wow.
And I can't look at he felt aggrieved, I'm sure, by the Toronto media. Sure. I think Randy does a little bit too. Sure. So fair enough. He took his shot back, but a lot of guys will remember that. I mean, I didn't, I don't have, at that point, I wasn't even married. I don't have kids even of my own now. So it didn't inconvenience me to the level it did some of my colleagues who, schlep around North America following this band of losers that season in particular.
Band of losers.
You know what I mean? Though.
Yeah,
totally.
yeah, no.
But here's the thing: is like I can see it from his standpoint. He's probably like, screw these guys. They're always making my life difficult. Mm-hmm. But when he made their life that difficult on that day, that was the end. That was the end for him with a lot of media people. So I'm guessing
bad karma,
anyone you've heard that's really angry at him, because I'm not really angry. I was just a younger guy in the beat then. Whatever. I took my medicine in the Ron Wilson days. But some of the guys that it's personal with, I guarantee you, it starts with Christmas Day.
Really?
Wow. Okay.
Interesting.
Chris, I got to ask you, how did you start? How did this all happen for you? Because whenever we have someone on and, finally in person, we get you in person, where did you start?
Well, for me, it started a long time ago. When I was 5 years old, I said I wanted to be a hockey writer for some reason. Like, I have no clue why. And I had no entrance to it at all or didn't know anybody, but I told my parents that. So then, like, literally, I'm this methodical thinker. I was just like, okay, I got to be a hockey writer. So my mom said, oh, you should go to Ryerson. So then I tried to do well in school and get into Ryerson. I went to Ryerson and once there, I got a job at the Canadian Press when I was 18 still, basically sweeping the floors. And once they let me in the door, I wasn't going to leave. And that, I think that part of the story is typical, that when you get an opportunity, you just go after it. But that's kind of in the smallest nutshell my thing. Like, for some reason, I had this vision. I wanted to do this job, and then I just kept working towards it. And I don't know how it happened still. Like, there are literally days, I'm not joking. Even still, I'm 34 now. I just covered my 10th Stanley Cup. And there are days that I wake up and I'm like, why am I here again? Like, especially because it gets weirder the older you get, because the longer you're around, it's like anything. Like, all of a sudden, everybody knows you. And that's not in a celebrity way, but like all of a sudden you're walking down the hall and just even players you haven't met are like, hey, Chris, or whatever.
Right.
Or I remember
That's
even
Johnny.
That's weird.
It gets weird. Yeah. This year I had one of my weirdest moments. One of the last games of the season, I'm walking into the media entrance at the Air Canada Center, and over in the corner is Bob Cole. And he just looks up and goes, Chris, you do a hell of a job. And like literally that like made my life. I'm like, you know my name?
I might have quit that day.
Yeah, I'm good.
I actually just resigned. I'm just getting used to it. But like, just stuff like that. I mean, Bob Cole, obviously for me, especially my age, like that's all I listened. That was the voice of hockey in my mind before I ever covered games.
Sorry, hold on. Did you just say you just resigned?
Oh, I will.
No,
I'm just saying. No.
Sorry, are we breaking Chris up?
No.
What's happening here?
I was just playing off Dangle, saying that it doesn't get better than that. And
I fell for it completely. I'm sorry.
I, for a very brief second, and then I went, no.
No. I thought so too, but I'm like, I better ask.
But it's funny. Any bad day you have, then when Bob Cole one day just like says your name out of the darkness and is like, you do a hell of a job. It's like, you feel like you're being touched by God or something. So
yeah.
You may very well have been...
Mr. Baby.
Johnny Chris, reporter. I had a really weird experience when I was working for Leafs TV. I was in the Air Canada Center.
Yeah.
I was in the seats. No one was there. And Andy Frost did his mic check. Then you actually feel like you're being talked to from God.
Yeah.
Yes.
Testing 1 2 Q107.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Absolutely. He's got one of those just classic
You got one
voices.
of those voices too.
Do I?
You just need a little bit more age to you, but eventually it's going to have like
maybe
even
some
more
cigarettes.
authority.
Take up some smoking. Yeah,
A little more whiskey and cigarettes, and you're there.
It's funny. They used to tell
I'll help you with the whiskey part.
They used to tell top 40 jocks like me to. They used to tell them to do drugs and smoke cigarettes and drink a lot of like whiskey and stuff like that. So a lot of the guys that when top 40, which is what I do for a day job.
I can't believe that was the instruction.
That was the instruction.
All right, you got the job. Here's the list of things you need to do to keep it.
Keep huffing on those cigarettes. We want you to be as deep as possible. And the thing is that a lot of them were in such horrendous health that a lot of them didn't make it past like age 55, age 60 because they partied their whole life because their owners were encouraging them to do this, and they were these big fat guys that like were in terrible health their entire careers. It's crazy, and how in the 60s and 70s things were so important that like a voice now. Whether my voice is good or not, that's awesome, but I don't think it matters, right? Whereas back then it really mattered. It really mattered on AM radio, which is kind of funny. I don't know. It's just.
I think a voice still matters on radio. I mean, I'm no expert, but when I'm driving around my car, you like hearing a good voice.
Are you listening to Katy Perry tunes? Is that a usual thing for you?
Every once in a while,
okay.
He's a huge fan of Blake and Wild. Loves Blake's take.
Yeah, it does love Blake. Okay, so I want to know the moment for you, the first surreal moment of your career.
Probably the first time I ever got to cover a Leafs game. And it was May 2002 in Game 5 against Ottawa in the second round of the playoffs.
Get out of here, man.
And the reason it was that timing is I just started an internship at the sports department at the Canadian Press. Like, university ends in April, so I just had started. And they're like, hey, we need a guy to go write like the fourth story tonight or whatever. Oh. Do you want to go? And I just remember being so jacked, because that for me was like the connection between 5-year-old Chris and 21-year-old Chris or whatever I was at the time, where I was like, I want to do this, and now I'm literally got a press pass and I'm going in there. And I remember I went and bought batteries like 10 hours before the game. I was like making sure everything was, I just was not going to screw up. Yeah. And I wrote that night about Curtis Joseph, because they lost to go 3-2 down in that series, about how it was maybe his final game at the ACC. And it ended up being his final season, but they won that series. And that was the game for young Dangle would remember, where Daniel Alfredson gooned Darcy Tucker with about 5 minutes to go.
Wow.
And scores the winning goal immediately after. And
it wasn't 5 minutes to go. It was he gooned
3
him.
Minutes to go, whatever. It was late.
I think he gooned him, turned around while Tucker was still lying on the ice and scored.
Right, sorry, that's what I mean. But that was with about 3 or 5 minutes left in the game.
Oh,
to put them ahead by 1.
Sorry, okay.
I mean, it was ridiculous. And no call. And what's funny, for full circle, last year I'm covering the NHL awards in Vegas, and I bump into Daniel Alfredson, who I've come to know pretty well after that in my career. And we sit down and we actually had a few whiskeys, and we're like just kibitzing about stuff. And I was
working on your voices.
And I was like, that was my first game, man, and that was awesome. And he was like, I love those series. Like, that was an awesome, like, he was like loving it.
Them?
He loved all those series, eh?
Well,
I mean, me too.
I love the outcome.
I don't want to misrepresent Daniel here at all. I just meant that he just said like the atmosphere around those, the Battle of Ontario at the time was awesome. And
we were so spoiled.
We really were. Those were great years.
There were 4 years to the show who weren't alive.
I know, we should get it more current, maybe.
No.
Well, how is that possible that we are? I mean, we're in our late 20s. Chris, you're in your early 30s. How do we sound old? How is that possible? How is it that there are 16 and 17-year-old kids who would not recognize that? That's crazy. That was that long ago.
This is how it happens, man. It happens when you're not watching. But yeah, that was my first surreal moment. I got to go there, and it's just scared, basically, probably. I don't remember the emotions that well, but it was awesome. And I'm lucky. I've been basically doing it ever since. I spent 1 year in London, England, I went and screwed around and became a journalist there, and then came back, and they made me the number 2 hockey writer at CP behind Pierre Lebrun, who's still one of my great friends and mentors. And
what's he doing these days?
He has a blog.
He's worked for everybody. That's a funny thing. He used to work at The Score way back when.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
He had 1 year with Sportsnet doing TV stuff. He now is obviously at TSN. He had a 7-year run on Hockey Night in Canada on the hot stove when they still had that going in the old format, and works for ESPN.com. So, and RDS now in French, because he's bilingual. So
wow. I've heard nothing but...
He's an enterprise, my friend.
Yeah. Why? And I've heard nothing but the most fun human being in the room.
Yeah, this is an important part of the industry that I hope continues, is that, especially when you're talking about those days when I was first starting, like, guys like him couldn't have been any nicer to me. When really I had no credentials to even like sit at the same table as him, frankly. But I probably wouldn't have become a hockey writer. Like, I wouldn't have seen this through if I didn't get encouragement at that time, because I wasn't like brimming with self-confidence at that point or anything. I was at that one game, but I was just an intern. It could have easily not turned into a job. And so I owe it to guys like Pierre, Scott Burnside, who used to live in Toronto, is now also working for ESPN, lives down in Atlanta. Even some of the old school guys who have like a bad knock in some ways, like Al Strachan was always really nice to me, and he was like kind of a big deal, and I was just this little kid. And so I always try to pass that on, and I hope other people do the same. I mean, the industry's changed a lot, but I think people need encouragement, and especially when you're young, because literally you could have one bad day when you're young and you might just quit something. Like, you're emotionally, you're kind of a little bit more helter-skelter, right? Whereas now if I have a bad day, I just like, tomorrow will be better.
I remember my first pro job, I was writing for Gino Retta, his junior hockey radio show. making $75 a week, and there was one particular show where I just couldn't
Get out of your own way.
stop fucking up. Could not stop. I tried and I couldn't. And I just remembered like walking down the street to my parents' house just crying. Like just I'm the worst. I suck and I should be fired.
Well, and I don't know the demographic of your radio show. Obviously, it's younger kids predominantly, but I don't know if there's a lot of aspiring journalists out there. But
there
you know,
are.
there's very. I can't ever get any of you a job. Like I have not that power. But if there's any way I can help you, if you need advice or whatever, feel free to reach out. And
Well, that's why you're here. We're
yeah. But I mean, in all seriousness,
helping the young kids.
Primer stuff was just semantics.
or you know, or if you see me, if you get to the ACC yourself one day and you're just the quiet guy who's there at his first game or whatever, and don't ever hesitate to say hello because you know I want to try to pass it forward in any small way I can too.
If you walk up to Chris, please address him as, "Hey, Johnny!"
I don't know. Dangle Navy is
They'll do
real.
it.
Oh.
They'll do it.
Oh, it's
we've already ruined Sasky Stewart's life.
Yeah. So
She was at a bar in Montreal. She's like, "Hey, I'm here to see you. I'm here to see you."
Have you heard this story?
Oh, shit.
I have heard it.
You have heard
I've
this
heard it
story?
out of Sasky's. Like I've heard it in person from Sasky.
Oh,
when
great.
Dangle big timed her, is that you're talking
I'm on the way, I'm making it. There's actually a Peter Gabriel song called Big Time.
That's
He
basically.
wrote it about me, Adam.
Yeah, you did.
That's basically the opposite of what I'm saying. I'm saying come and I'll try to help you. Dangle will not acknowledge you if you see him in public.
Only if you acknowledge him first and acknowledge that you're there for him, right?
Yes.
Right.
Only
People
if
always
you have
ask
Dangle
me-
on a hockey jersey or
Yeah,
something.
exactly.
People always ask me if it's Steve or Steven, and I always tell them the same thing. How dare you speak to me? I stole that from Jeff Goldberg. My friend, Jeff.
Yeah, your boy Jeff. Do we want to do the press conference?
Yeah, we have a ton of questions.
Let's do it.
I also did some digging to find your tweets from December 2011, December 25th, 2011, when Ron Wilson announced his contract.
Oh, wow, Jesse.
And congratulations, you did not tweet about the extension. So good for you.
Unusual restraint. I will say, I'm not religious at all, but Christmas is the one day in my family that everybody always is together, and I do not tweet that day.
Yeah, you don't touch it.
You could also look if you wanted. I got married in July 7th, 2012, and I believe there's a 2-week period after that I didn't tweet on my honeymoon either. So
Wow. Elliot Fried was on the show last summer. And I remember him saying that right after the show was done, he was going to go on vacation, and that his wife was like, put the phone away. You're on vacation. And within 4 days, bingo! Like there was some late breaking July news or something that he had to get on the phone for. And I thought,
it's a compulsion.
yeah. I mean, it must be hard for you even going on vacation because you kind of think, well, what if I miss something, right?
Although by this time of the year, and I don't want to look ungrateful because this is a great job, but by this time of the year, you're ready for a vacation. I mean, literally, I was home 4 days between April 11th and June 12th, covering the Stanley Cup playoffs.
I'm surprised it was that many.
Don't tell the bosses.
Days?
Yeah, 4 days. And now it's just a couple days after that. Obviously, this is a busy period. I'm going to Vegas, going to Buffalo for the draft, going to do the July 1st stuff. But once we get to like July 5th or 6th, don't expect to hear from me. I'm actually going to Europe on July 6th. So
Good for you. Where are you going?
we're going to Copenhagen, Helsinki, and St. Petersburg, Russia.
Wow.
And get this. So that was my plan. That was our planned vacation, my wife and I. And I know the cup keeper, Mike Bolt, really well. And he came up to me and he's like, someday you should go to Europe during a cup day. And I'm like, well, I'm going to be in Europe and whatever these days. And he goes, where are you going? And I was like, Finland. He's like, we're going to get Olli Määtä's cup day while you're there. So I have no idea if that's going to come true. But if it does, maybe I will tweet from Olli Määtä's cup day because I would just be there in a fun capacity. But that would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
In Jyväskylä, Finland. No one has ever had the cup in Jyväskylä until Olli. So
wow.
What part of Finland even is that?
north.
North far. Eh?
That's all of Finland.
Yeah.
Right. It's a cool place, though. I really like Finland. I mean, obviously, I'm going there. But I got a lot of Finnish hockey writer buddies, actually. And just Finnish people are so, like, kind of hard or stoic on the outside. But once you crack the shell, just the nicest, best people you could ever spend time with. So my original plan this summer, now that I'm just gabbling about anything, was I was going to go live in Helsinki for like 8 weeks. But it didn't come together, and lots of stuff's gone on. But we're still going to go there for part of our trip.
Good for you. Wow. Well, I've always wanted to see the Scandinavian countries like Sweden, Finland, Norway would be. I've heard they're just amazing,
especially in the summer because the sun doesn't go down. Basically,
right.
Like even in Helsinki, I was there once in May, and it was like 3 hours of darkness. So I'm guessing in July, I don't know. Maybe we have some listeners in Finland. Who knows?
We do.
Yeah.
We 100% do.
Shout out to the Suomi pack. Then, I've got Kipis and Kitos for you guys. That's about it. I know one swear word, but I'm not going to go there.
Okay. Well, you can. It really doesn't matter.
I have to look it up again.
Ryan's wondering if you ever text players, and if so, what's it like when you're talking to them?
I do, and it depends the time of year. I mean, during the season, I feel like you have to be more respectful. You check if it's a game day or not, especially if it's someone, you're not every day. You can't remember which team's playing where, and usually just some guys you get almost like a social relationship with, so you're just kind of like, hey man, what's going on? And then others, you just texting for news or. I'm sure PR staffs out there aren't listening to this, but because some teams don't like that. But I mean, you get to a point with certain players where that's part of it. I find a new thing that's cropped up too is a lot of players I'll DM with now too on Twitter, because so many players are active on Twitter and get to know you that way. So yeah, it's a regular contact with certain guys, and that's really that's what you want. I mean, we're trying to figure out what these guys, who they are, right? I mean, we're trying to cover them fairly, honestly. So a lot of it isn't. We're not really gossiping. It's just keeping in touch with these others' lives.
Okay.
Question from Steve D. Have you ever had someone contact you after you wrote something or said something and said, "This is bullshit"?
Sort of. It's funny. Rarely do people lash at you directly.
Like, not even angrily, but just gone, that was unfair, or that's wrong, or...
So
yeah,
are you saying that they freeze you out?
Usually they either sick their PR person on you, which is a little different level of conversation, right? Because that person is a bit removed from the person who's actually angry. Mm-hmm. So it's not as tense, the conversation you have, because they're just like, oh, but he told me, he said that. Like, it's sort of more a way to diffuse the bomb. But it's amazing, I will say, how few people ever call you or confront you in the rink or whatever and really lay into you. I mean, it happens occasionally, but not often to me. One of the funny ones, actually, Coley Campbell, the All-Star game in Ottawa, 2011, 2012?
A few years ago now.
A couple years ago. Sidney Crosby report came out while we were at there. It was while he had his concussion issues, and there was some report, and so he was in the news that weekend and whatever. So I'm driving back from Ottawa, my phone rings, it's Coley Campbell, and I'm like, the heck, that's weird. And I just pick up the phone. He's like, fucking shit, fuck, shit, what the fuck? And then I'm like, Coley, what's going on? He's like, oh, why did you write this and this and that? And I was like, man, I didn't. And he was called the wrong reporter. So I've
called Johnny on my phone, and I said, Johnny.
I love Coley because he's old school, and I actually do like dealing with him. But he would be one if you ever crossed him, I think he would call you and berate you. But I haven't had a lot of that in my career, really. I mean, you usually hear through the grapevine, oh, they weren't happy about that. But it's usually more passive aggressive, I would say, than aggressive. And
I guess and in your position, your job is not to make people happy. Your job is to serve an audience of fans. Right. So you're not going to make people happy all the time.
Well, and
that's part of the job.
And part of it too, man. I've been covering the Leafs for like 10 years. So there hasn't been a lot of happy in there.
Right.
Which, I'm not making light of in this case, but I'm just saying there hasn't been a lot of happy to cover. And sometimes that gets lost, I think, when certain people get angry about your coverage. It's just like, well, mix in a few wins and I'll find something, gladly I'll write about something great. I mean, I don't know, I'm not a cynical sort. So, I would love to cover a winning team someday in any city. No, I don't just mean the Leafs, but that's kind of what makes the playoffs fun, is because you're around teams that are winning. Mm-hmm.
Sorry. I was going to say, back when I worked for Leafs TV, I also had to do the news ticker. And let me tell you, for a team that's in 29th place, kind of hard to find positive things to put in the news ticker. But damn it if I don't remember that Carl Gunnarsson was second among rookie defensemen in plus-minus. That was all I could come up with. Yeah. That was all I could find.
And I think, yeah,
but it's going to change, This year's going to be so different.
Do you think this team is actually on ice this year? Because my feeling is that you've got a core of young guys, and you got guys like Brooks Laich and Milan Mahalik, and then obviously JVR and Kadri and those guys. Do you think this team is going to be marginally better or a huge jump forward?
I think it's going to be a huge jump forward. It doesn't mean it's all the way to the playoffs. I mean, it's a long way from 30th to 16th, but based on how they played with Mike Babcock and based on simply the fact they're going to have a lot more talent in the lineup, just even the guys that have been at the Marlies, the 5 or 6 that end up graduating this year and playing the bulk of the year, I don't see a scenario where they're not making a 12 or 15, 20-point game in the standings.
Wow.
I mean, it could happen. I mean, that it doesn't happen, but I would be stunned if it didn't, really. Again, I don't see them as a playoff team. I know some people have predicted that, but I mean, what did they end up with this year? 60 points?
I think it was 69 points.
Okay, so 20 would be, okay, I'm talking more like mid-80s is where I see the high mark, and if they overachieve, maybe a bit higher than that. But, you know, I think you're going to see a lot to be excited about. And look, it's the first time. Look at all these guys that are coming up together. They're not all going to make it. They're not all going to become what they could become or what people want them to become just by the odds. But, I mean, a couple of these guys could be dynamic. And to the point where you're watching the Tuesday game against Carolina in November and you're like, as a fan, yelling at your TV because you're so excited about what you're seeing. And my goodness, it's been a long time since we had that.
Yeah, I remember those days. Go ahead, Jess.
So how much do you think preparation for the expansion draft is going to impact the trade market? That's from Vasky.
It's going to be huge. You know, so the bulk of, as the cup finals are running down, I started reaching out to the guys I talked to around the league. There's a lot of cap guys and assistant GMs and stuff, and everybody is bracing for the big one now. And, you know, as we've touched on a little bit on the show, is that doesn't mean it's all going to happen, but I think we're going to see some significant moves made. I mean, even a Marc-Andre Fleury being traded in today's day and age counts as a significant move, and he won't be alone. He's just one that's kind of obvious, and I think it's going to continue throughout the next 12 months. I mean, we're going to see the first sort of blitz of it here around the draft and into free agency, but once the season gets going, teams are going to be kind of adjusting on the fly, and you can bet already today 30 teams have their 10 or 11 guys they would protect if it was today. And obviously, as time moves along, you change that. But I mean, teams already know that. So that if you've got a guy on the outside and he's making too much and he doesn't help you, you're trying to move that contract. So I think this is going to be one of the coolest years in 20 years since we had expansion draft, if you're into transactions and trades and the like, because we're going to see things that have happened that we haven't seen ever happen in the salary cap.
We're going to see offer sheets?
I hope so, but I'm not confident on that one.
Okay.
I can't figure out why we haven't seen more, other than the old boys network and kind of a fear that it doesn't work out. You know, that's one thing GMs have said to me is that, like, why would we do that? Because it creates sort of ill will in the marketplace. And then,
but why does it create ill will in the first place? That's the rule.
Because it's still a little bit of a small town, the NHL, and that's what I love about it. It's also what drives me crazy occasionally. But I mean, it created ill, like Brian Burke ended up like challenging Kevin Lowe to fight in a barn out of that offer sheet. So I mean,
and it was Dustin Penner.
I mean, I realize, right.
Should have invited him to the barn, and inside the barn is a giant kegger just for Kevin Lowe. Congratulations, buddy. Oh, thank you so much.
Right. Well, the reason it creates ill will too is other GMs would argue it inflates salaries for everybody. Because if you're going out and offer sheeting whatever, a young winger, and you pay him more than that team was ever going to pay him, then other people use that as a comparable contract.
Right.
So I think that was, from what I remember, I mean, Brian had a lot of bluster in those days, but I think that was his real fundamental problem, wasn't losing the player, but that all of a sudden, even remember Thomas Vanek, they did it to, Vanek got an offer sheet, $50 million on his second deal. Like 10 years
insane.
ago, 7 years, $50 million, I think it was. And so then all of a sudden, other players that have pretty good numbers as entry levels, they want 7 years, $50 million. And obviously no one else got it exactly like that, but you know, because part of any negotiation is if you have leverage, and it's almost like they refuse to give leverage to the system, I guess. But to me, get in there, boys. It'd be fun.
Well, and I can only
Steven Stamkos, by the way, his last contract sat on the open market for like 3 weeks as a restricted free agent.
And nobody offers sheet.
And no one offers sheet. I mean, maybe, I think, especially at that point, he's 22, 23, Tampa is matching no matter what. But why not put them in a pickle by offering them like $12 million?
Well, and this is what I'm saying. So even, I can only think of the Penner example when a team actually got the player. I'm sure there were others, but when
Philly offer sheeted Ryan Kessler way back when he was with Vancouver.
This is what I'm saying. And did that damage relations between those teams irreparably? I think Vancouver offered one for Backus. I think Halmerson got one from someone.
Yeah, San Jose.
San Jose.
Remember, because they got Niemi right after.
Yes, they did.
It was kind of like a end around. Didn't really work out for San Jose. But
no, but like those teams, like, did they never speak again?
Well, you have no choice eventually, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like if you're a reporter and you tick someone off, like eventually, usually the person has to talk to you at some point. Like who keeps a vendetta forever? Colby Armstrong actually told me a story about when Dave Feschuk wrote that James Reimer story. He was playing for the Leafs about he got his mom on the phone and the Leafs were all bent out of shape and this and that. And Colby said, players only meeting they had. And they're like, we're freezing out Feschuk. Nobody's talking to Feschuk. And Colby said literally the next day, the doors open at practice. Feschuk goes over to whoever it was and the player talked to him. Because really, what's that player going to do? Like, let's say I can't remember who's on that team. Daryl Boyce. I don't know. Who was on that team?
Oh, boy.
Tim Brent.
There was
Tim Brent.
Bozak was on that team.
But is Tim Brent really going to say to Dave Feschuk, who's one of the big hockey writers in this market, I'm not talking to you because you talked to James's mom? Like, that makes no sense.
Yeah.
On no planet does that make sense. So I feel like I'm trying to tie this all together in that, yeah, okay, so maybe there's some hurt feelings for a few months, but if you have a player we want to trade and we're going to talk again.
Yeah. So maybe it's worth going for. That'd be cool.
This is sort of a follow-up to the last question. This is from Reddit. Pros and cons of the team in Vegas. Do you think it'll succeed? How do you think that's going to go?
The pros are it's going to be awesome because they have like this amazing stadium right off the strip in Vegas, and there's going to be lots of buzz and lots of entertainment. In fact, what we were talking about way earlier, this is anti-NHL. I mean, they're actually embracing kind of the entertainment aspect of this franchise, and I think it's going to be a wild success myself. I think it's going to be... I think it's going to be a thing. I mean, they're the first pro team to go into Vegas. That city is much larger than the Strip, even though most of us don't get past the first 3 hotels we step foot in. All of a sudden, a week has passed. We don't know what day it is. And the first time I went to Vegas with my buddies, we were supposed to go to the Grand Canyon, and we didn't get to the Grand Canyon. So, we're supposed to like take a day or two out to do a day trip that never happened.
I was in very rough shape my first flight out of Vegas, and you feel really bad on the way to the airport.
It's like you ate Burger King when you leave there.
Yeah. But then you get there and you don't feel as bad because everyone looks like they're leaving Vegas.
Yes. So I don't see a lot of cons. I mean, some players probably aren't going to want to live there. Mm-hmm. You know, I could see some spouses potentially, although, you know, they have a good income tax situation. From what I understand, there's great neighborhoods. You know, much like some players over the years haven't necessarily loved downtown Buffalo, but there's Amherst, which is a great place that they live. And then every ex-Sabre stays in Amherst. I mean, I think to me, Vegas is going to become one of these places that's an NHL destination. I really do. I don't see a lot of big cons. You know, you can gamble and drink everywhere nowadays, honestly. That's like, I think the old notion is tripping people up. I guess the biggest question is there going to be a big enough local fan base? Are they going to rely only on tourists or not? But I think the fact they've sold 13,000 season tickets, pretty good start.
I think so. I mean,
what an opportunity, honestly. You imagine playing in Vegas in the NHL?
Be cool.
It's going to be awesome.
I hope they embrace the neighborhood too, and they have a name like the High Rollers or something like that. Like
it sounds like the Black Knights is booked.
Oh,
I'm not big on it.
No.
It doesn't make any sense. What are you the Black Knight of? Where is there a history of Black Knights there? Like,
it's Bill Foley, the owner's he went to a U.S. college, I believe. That is Black Knights is the name.
Stop it.
I believe it's that.
The NHL cannot let that happen.
He has some personal tie to the Black Knights name, and I believe it's through a college.
By the way,
Aces.
So I know, since we're talking about owners doing things, the Carmano situation. Do you see that? Because Bill Daly saw that as just a family squabble. Do you see that as a family squabble?
You know, a son suing his father, as one does.
3 sons.
3 sons.
Suing their father.
I see it as a family squabble that could boil over and burn a lot of hands. You know what I mean? I mean, it is a family squabble on some level. And other owners have been involved in other lawsuits to do with their other businesses, and the hockey team has been unaffected. But given that we know Carmanos wants to take on a partner in Carolina to help basically get some cash infused into the franchise, and given that this is happening in the background, I mean, it could certainly develop into something more serious. So,
are we talking about relocation or just full-on sale of the team?
I don't know if everyone wants to say relocation because I think everyone has Quebec as like everyone wants to see that fulfilled and see what that's like. But I think first, because the biggest issue right now, Carmanos is only entertaining sales for 49% of the team. He wants to have controlling interest. I think you're going to first see a situation, will someone buy it outright and run it? Because that's a different kind of sale, right? It's like, you know, do I want to buy half your car, but you still own it, and I get to run it a little bit, get it on weekends?
Yeah.
But, you know, you're not really the owner. I think that there might be a different market if the whole team is for sale completely. It's going to come to a head, though. I mean, there's reports that their $200 million has been advanced to them by the league, which is not unusual, but it's a lot of money. I mean, that's part of what the league can do and does do for other teams.
Isn't that like roughly what some teams are worth?
Yeah. Well, even
So why would they advance them $200 million?
Well, because they need the money, and because the league pays them money. They get a share of playoff gates. They get revenue sharing. They get other TV money. So basically, they will advance you. It's like going to one of those checks cashed places, essentially for the NHL, where they'll advance you your paycheck a little bit ahead of time.
Payday loans.
There you go, payday loans. Are they a sponsor of the program?
Yeah, no. But payday loans are like the worst financial decision you can make. So. And I hope the NHL doesn't charge huge interest.
The one thing is the NHL has a tremendous actual interest rate. This is one of the reasons they encourage teams to use it, because they can borrow at an insanely low interest rate from the league.
Okay. Well, then good.
So it's not necessarily a bad financial decision, but if $200 million as reported is correct, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of Rogers TV money. Like, that's not just 1 year.
Yeah.
Wow.
That might be the whole kit and caboodle.
We're good on questions.
You did? You're good?
We're good on
Chris, Steve, do you have anything more to add?
Well, I was going to say, hopefully Carolina will be, very smart with their money. Cam Ward, 2 years. There you go, $6 million, whatever. I
That's
read
crazy
that,
to me.
On a certain timeline today.
Did you? Would it be at Reporter Chris on Twitter?
It might have been.
I think that's insane. That's insane money for Cam Ward. Is that not?
Yeah, but on a 2-year deal, you can at least stomach it.
Well, and it's 2 years because they want him to get scooped up.
They're going to expose him in the expansion draft, I'm sure.
Okay, fine.
Do you think, I can't remember if we talked about this last show or recently, do you think there are a bunch of teams who are like, no worries, the expansion draft will solve all our issues, and then that player doesn't get picked and they'll be crushed?
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because there's a few teams out there that are looking at their problem contract and going like, oh yeah, that's the one that'll get picked. And not like I'm just saying, Rick Nash has a no move, right? Mm-hmm. He does. So he wouldn't be one. Maybe Kessel, I wouldn't call him a problem contract, but it's a long contract that maybe Pittsburgh might see an opportunity. Yeah, there's lots worse than this. I mean, Dustin Brown, probably the best example, is still got, 5 years left on that thing? I mean, you're hoping that problem goes away from you, but it probably won't.
But my question, it's a problem for a reason. Why would the Vegas team want it?
Well, this is one thing someone texted me, is that yes, there's a high, because there's a lot of talk that this means this team's going to be good. And this guy said, depends who the GM is, because, which is obviously always the case, but he's just saying there'll be a temptation to take names and guys that have had some repute in the league but are on bad deals or whatever on the way down. But there actually will be some smart bets out there, players who are maybe in their early 20s, mid-20s, that the team just couldn't protect, but they're not the glittery name, but that could be really smart pickups. And it's going to be about identifying that talent, which is one of the interesting things of the expansion announcement next week, guys, is who's going to run this team? Because since we already know the team's coming, essentially, we haven't seen the big flashy press conference, but the real meat is in who's going to be making decisions and how are they going to go about being ready for that expansion draft, because that's just as important as the teams around the league now, figuring out who they're going to expose.
Wow.
And they have to pick from all 30 teams at least one player. So
one player from all 30.
They might not have a choice to pick Brown or whoever.
That could happen too, and part of it is they're going to need some salary. Mm-hmm. It's sort of like Cam Ward deal to me is like, okay, I get it's not great, but they do have to get to the floor. So It's a guy he's been okay for you. Mm-hmm. He's been a community guy, good guy in the dressing room, blah, blah, blah. But, that Vegas team might have to take some bad salary just to get to the floor.
Well, and if I'm the Vegas owner, and he's already got some pretty good support there with 13,000 season tickets sold. That's pretty amazing. I go after you get to the floor with the expansion draft and then go after the biggest marketable free agent next year, who is probably Jonathan Tavares.
2 years.
2 years.
Is that 2 years? Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. It's 2 years. Okay, so it's not Tavares then.
So what's the cap roughly? 71?
71.4 now. I think it could come in a little 72, 73 for next year.
Okay, so let's say it's 73 million. 73 divided by 30. You're looking at 2.43 million from each of the 30 NHL teams. I don't think they need to, really get a guy like Dustin Brown or no, we need to get to the floor. I don't think they're going to have that problem.
And I'm sure Columbus will lend you Dave Clarkson and his deal.
David's got to waive his no-move clause to be exposed.
Oh, right.
Columbus is one of those teams. They've got right now 5 no moves.
Oh.
Now they have options. Feder Tootin could be bought out. Scott Hartnell could be traded. Lots of talk around him around the league that he could be moved. So
he waived his no trade, right?
Yes, for limited teams. So there's a chance that when that day comes, they've only got 2 or 3. But right now they got 5. So maximum you have 11 spots. You can either do 7 forwards, 3D, 1 goalie, or you can do 8 skaters and 1 goalie. So it's either 11 or 9 spots. 5 of their 9 or 11 are eaten up if it was today, which is not good because they're not eaten up by guys you really need.
No, that's the thing. It's the guys making $5 million, right? It's always those $5 million
those
deals.
Those tweeners are the ones that really bite teams. I think next time a team wants to give out a $5 or $6 million contract, they have to really think about it. Because to me, you either want to give out $10 million deals or you're value shopping.
Or the thing about offer sheets, the compensation for offering a $5 million contract is a first and a third.
Right.
Just take that.
Right, because that's pretty good. Although, I guess if they're going to a good team, it's a late first is different than an early first. Mm-hmm. But if it's a team that could miss the playoffs, that could be a lottery pick.
Yep.
Like, that's the crazy thing. I mean, the Leafs found out about that with Sagan, right? I mean, it's occasionally... And I don't think you can lottery protect those ones.
Why, Chris? Why?
I had to bring up Sagan.
I like that you still care. I like that you've gotten to this stage in your life and you still care.
You know what? I've tried not to. I've tried to. I went through this little phase when I was, interning or getting my first couple jobs where I told myself, you know what? I'm much more of a hockey fan now. I'm not really a Leafs fan. I'm just kind of a fan of all.
And then you just embraced it.
A year or two later, I was just like, nope, love James Reimer, Transformers, fire Randy Carlisle, do this, do that, and I couldn't. I shed any hope of being a reputable Chris or Freege, and I just decided to do my own thing. I
got the sense in Pittsburgh this spring that it's not exactly the same, but it's that kind of vibe that a lot of people were finally just letting themselves believe again. That after they had their team that won in 2009 and then they got disappointed and they're like, we don't really like hockey anyway. And then it was just like an explosion. Mm-hmm. There, it was crazy. The fans there was insane. If they had won Game 5 on home in San Jose, there might have been a riot. And I don't mean to disparage the people of Pittsburgh, but there was 30,000 people crowding around the rink. Well, I saw 4 police officers max. There was 1 porta potty. I'm like, something bad. This is just a bad recipe.
It was. I think Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment was really smart to design Maple Leaf Square the way they did, because being in Pittsburgh, you're like, where do all the cars go? Where do the people go when it's done? Where do they go to the bathroom was another thing I was wondering. It was a little messy. It looked like it was fun, but it could have got real bad real quick.
The thing about Pittsburgh, too, I know that...
What a sports town, though.
Great sports town. Amazing. Yeah. But they pulled all the flammable stuff off the street. So every porch, they took all the wooden chairs off. They took all the newspapers out of the newspaper containers. And then they named the street after Matt Murray for the day. They were ready. But I know that with 4 cops there... And I'm sure very polite police officers.
I'm sure they had others around, and I'm really not trying to make too much light of it, but it was a real you got a sense this team got people fired up. And even yesterday, I think their parade was the most attended parade in Pittsburgh history, more than the Steeler parades.
Wow!
And it's not even Pittsburgh's not a very big town.
No, 600,000, I think, for the downtown area.
Yeah. It reminds me of
a lot of
Boston
people are in the counties around it, though.
In some ways. Huge sports town. You think it's bigger than it is, and then you look at the actual number and you go, oh, really? Pittsburgh's the size of Winnipeg?
But you got to look at the surrounding areas, right? The surrounding counties that kind of feed into that. And I mean, you can't have an NFL team, and 55,000 people in that stadium every game. Every single game.
That's a percentage of the population.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Huge percentage of the population. And they take it seriously, and they're there every game, right? And it's so, I mean, there are a lot of people in those surrounding counties that feed into that. But yeah, downtown core. I mean, downtown core Toronto's what, 2 million? It's not even, doesn't even sound that big.
2.5?
Yeah.
2.6, something like that.
But then the GTA, it's 6 million.
It's insane.
Yeah, so.
A suburb of Toronto.
Are we wrapping up?
Yeah.
I just thought of one last thing.
Please.
Uh-oh. So he's giving me an evil eye.
No, because I know you love James Reimer. So
Chris smiles before he's about to tell you a really good story. He's like, I got something.
I feel like it might make Steve well. So the other day, just before the end of the series, a day before Game 6 to practice, I was just chewing the fat with Reimer after their skate. And then we were talking about how many people were outside for Game 5 in Pittsburgh and how crazy it was. He goes, how do you think that compared to Maple Leaf Square during the playoffs? So he's still got part of your heart. He's still looking for... those days. Because you were in Maple Leaf Square for Game 7, weren't you?
I try not to think about it. I was there for game, I think it was 3 or 4 and 7. They didn't win either of the games I was there for.
Right. So you're to blame.
100%. No, I was the one screaming at the people. So you were at the game, right?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
One of the coolest games I've ever covered, I have to say.
I'm sure it was.
You don't ever see that, ever.
Oh, if I step outside of my Leaf self very briefly, like one of the greatest first round moments, like ever, pretty much.
Even going to that dressing room afterwards, like nobody could lie to you for once. Like their soul was laid bare on the ice.
Joffrey Lupul tweeted, that hockey game will haunt me for the rest of my life.
Awesome.
But I remember I was in Maple Leaf Square, Kadri makes it 4-1, and behind me I hear plain as day. It wasn't that many people, but it was enough of them. Na 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 na.
So you didn't think it was in the bag?
I have been doing this too long, Chris. Although I was thinking, you know what? I like their chances against the Rangers. And then in round 3, they get the Penguins. And you know what? They're not favored, but they played them really well this year. And oh my God, I think the Leafs might. Fuck.
First TV timeout after 4-1, and I'm like booking hotels in New York. You know,
that's what everyone says.
Well, keep in mind, I'm doing that every playoff series.
Right.
We have everything booked every which way, and you got to cancel everything after an elimination game.
Plus, a New York-Toronto series would have been awesome. Awesome. Thanks, Boston. Thanks. Oh.
So Rhymes wanted to know how it compared to Maple Leaf Square.
And how did you answer him?
It didn't.
I said that I think that there was more on Maple Leaf Square, but I wasn't out there, so I don't know for sure.
I was only there
I don't know what the numbers were.
I was there for game 1, 2,
it was
5,
wild.
and 7. It was wild. Yeah, I went there a lot.
Yeah, I was there for game 1 for the Pittsburgh final, but there were significantly more people for like 2, 5.
Yeah, I think it was more, but I mean, who knows?
Who knows?
But I just love that it was on Rhymes' mind.
I was talking to Mike Darnay about it. He's the blogger who bought me the ticket to the game. And he sent me a picture of the crowd, and I go, dude, imagine this crowd, but bigger, for a round 1 non-elimination game. Like,
that's what it would be.
God, I just want the Leafs to be good so bad. And going to the Stanley Cup final only made it way worse, because everyone there is so happy. They're so happy, so excited. And I just...
Although the happiness goes away when you're the Sharks.
Fair
pretty
enough.
quickly.
That is fair enough.
Like, you're all excited, but you're getting your heart stomped on at the same time, so...
They took this loss, I think their fan base took this loss a little better than any fan base I've seen in recent years.
They stayed in the building for the Cup presentation. Like a lot of them.
I would stick around.
Why not?
I would want to see it.
First ever Cup presentation in San Jose. You know, when you think about it that way. Wow. I'm sure they don't, but
that's true.
They seem to take it pretty well.
Yeah, well, classy people. Chris, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
This was a beefy podcast.
It was a long one.
I kept looking up at the clock. I'm like, he still seems pretty stoked to be here.
Yeah, I was ready for you to say, listen, guys, can we just shut the fuck down? Because this is a lot.
I haven't eaten lunch yet. That's that's my only impediment right now to continuing on.
But you mentioned earlier that, you know, like when I'm on this show again in 6 months, I really hope you do. Like, I really
gladly.
We love having you on, and your stories are phenomenal. And of course, if you have any questions for Chris about, you know, getting into the biz or whatever, you ever see him on the street, like you said, go up or try to tweet at you, but you get a lot of tweets. So
or come out to Puck Talks June 29th. Dangle and I will be there.
That's right. Just confirmed.
Going to be at the Drake in Toronto.
Oh, so that'll be fun.
It'll be good, and that's always a good environment too to kibitz and who knows.
Next week?
Yeah. No, 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah, soon. Yeah. Right before free agency.
Okay.
Like, I'm concerned I'll be on stage like 3 pints in and the Leafs will make a deal or something.
Why do you keep agreeing to do this shit? You're like, yeah, I'll come on the podcast. I'm like, oh, really?
I don't know, because it's fun.
Oh, I'm glad.
What a guy.
But seriously, like, I love hockey just as much as the people listening. So, like, why not engage with people? Like, that's what brings enjoyment to it.
For sure.
I'm not just sitting, I don't want to sit alone in my room going like, hockey's awesome.
So you don't want to be Steve.
I was about to say, hey, I made a career of that.
Follow the guys on Twitter at Steve_Dangle, at Adam WYLDE, and at Jesse Blake.
The Steve Dangle Podcast. Brought to you by Panago Pizza. Order at panago.com and stuff your face with deliciousness.